Chapter 720. The Vice Academy head was anxious and didn't pay much attention to him. "What is it?" he asked. "What is it?" Guan Shilin looked at him and asked, "May I borrow the Vice Academy head's warrant for a moment?" The Vice Academy head was startled. He glanced at Guan Shilin, then looked at the dean. After the dean nodded, the Vice Academy head handed the warrant to Guan Shilin. "What do you need the warrant for?" Guan Shilin took the warrant, and a smile finally appeared on his stiff face. He didn't answer. Instead, he bowed to the two of them, then called Yi Jing and quickly left. What is he trying to do? The Vice Academy head frowned as he watched the two of them leave. You'll find out soon enough. With that, the dean retracted his gaze and looked at the quiet immortal's cave. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. This Fengjiu was too good at sleeping. After the time it takes half an incense stick to burn, the crowd saw Guan Shilin and Yi Jing return. They were carrying things in their hands, and behind them were several students who were helping them carry the items. Under the puzzled gazes of the crowd, Guan Shilin ordered the students to place the items in front of the immortal's cave's barrier. He even set up a stove and heated up a pot of spirit chicken ginseng soup. Not only that, but when the lids of the other items were removed, the crowd couldn't help but stare with wide eyes. There was a thin meat bun filled with soup, a roasted spirit chicken, and a large leg of spirit pork being roasted over the fire. The sight of it caused the crowd to drool. What are they doing? Are they hungry? How can they get food from the ovens? That's food for the instructors. How can they bring so much food here? That's right. Furthermore, is it really appropriate to eat here at this time of the day? The students were all talking amongst themselves, and even some of the instructors were furious. However, since the dean and the vice-chancellor hadn't said anything, they couldn't say anything. After all, they had seen the vice-chancellor give Guan Shilin a warrant. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to enter the ovens. Seeing the scene in front of the cave residents and the man named Guan Shilin placing the steaming hot delicacies in front of the barrier, Mo Chen, who was standing at the top of a mountain not far away, smiled. So that was the case. The dean and vice-dean were silent at this moment. They thoughtfully looked at Guan Shilin as he fanned himself with the fan. When they saw him sending the aroma of the food into the barrier, they were startled for a moment before their eyes lit up. So that's how it was. Was he trying to wake up the Fengjiu in the cave with the smell of food? However, would this work? The two of them couldn't help but feel suspicious. However, in the space of a few breaths, their suspicions turned into astonishment and joy. Fengjiu was awakened by hunger. As her stomach rumbled, she lazily turned over. As she was half asleep, a faint aroma of meat drifted in. She sniffed it. It smells so good. She thought she must be dreaming, because her cave residents, or even the entire mountain, couldn't smell the aroma of food. And so, she turned over again, this time facing the outside. Smelling the aroma of meat, she fell asleep contentedly. However, as the aroma grew stronger and stronger, to the point where she could even name the food, her stomach rumbled even louder. She suddenly opened her eyes and took a deep breath. She stared blankly for a moment, then jumped up. With her hair in a mess, she threw on her clothes and rushed outside. Chapter 721. Before anyone could see him, his voice rang out from within the immortal's cave. Even as everyone outside stared in astonishment, a figure shot out like a bolt of lightning, opened the immortal's cave's enchantment, and charged toward the delicacies. Big bro. You didn't go to the ovens to steal, did you? Fengjiu looked at the delicious food in front of her in surprise. She didn't feel sleepy anymore. She only had eyes for the food in front of her. She couldn't help but reach out to pick up a thin-skinned meat bun with soup. However, before her hand could touch the meat bun, she was stopped by her brother. Big bro, what are you doing? She asked, glaring at him. Go wash up, change your clothes, and then come out to eat." With that, Guan Shilin gestured for her to look around her. In his heart, he felt both helpless and sympathetic. How badly had Xiaojiu starved? All she could see was the food. Didn't she notice that everyone around her was staring at her? After his reminder, Fengjiu raised her eyes and looked around. She couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. The students and instructors of the various academies were all looking at her as if they had seen a ghost. She couldn't help but feel puzzled at the same time. "Big bro," she said, her voice low, "all I did was take a nap. How come I'm surrounded by so many people when I wake up? Don't tell me they caught you stealing something from the ovens." She leaned closer to Guan Shilin and asked in a hushed voice. When he heard this, Guan Shilin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Don't talk nonsense. Go wash up and then come out. The food won't taste good if it gets cold." As soon as the words left his mouth, Fengjiu, who had been next to him just a moment ago, responded with a grunt. Then, like a gust of wind, she rushed into the immortal's cave. Her speed left everyone speechless. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have found it hard to believe that the young man with a head of disheveled hair and a sleepy expression was the same elegant, handsome young man from before. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that they would see such a side of him? But what kind of sense of smell did he have? And how much did he love food? They had been shouting outside for so long, and had blasted the enchantment so many times. They had waited for so long, but he hadn't woken up. Who would have thought that in the end, he would be awakened by the aroma of the delicious food? It really made them speechless. At this time, the dean and the vice-dean's eyes fell on Guan Shilin. Once again, they felt that not only was Fengjiu not simple, but the people around him were also not simple. Guan Shilin was no pushover either. With the temptation of delicious food, Fengjiu washed up several times faster than usual. When she came out again, she was back to the elegant young man everyone saw in the past. She didn't care about the crowd. She took the chopsticks from Guan Shilin and ate a steamed pork bun and soup. She asked, "Brother, what are they doing?" Yi Jing scooped a bowl of spirit chicken ginseng soup for her and said, "Drink the soup first. Don't burn yourself." "Thank you." Fengjiu smiled at her, took a spoonful, and slowly drank it. He picked up a shrimp dumpling and said vaguely, "You guys eat too." "I'm embarrassed to eat alone." Although he said that, everyone looked at the way he was eating and didn't feel that he was embarrassed at all. On the mountaintop not far away, Chen glanced at the young man who was stuffing his face with food. He couldn't help but smile, shook his head, and turned to leave. Chapter 722. Fengjiu. The dean walked up to her and called out. "Dean, would you like to sit down and eat with us?" She raised her head to look at the dean in front of her. She was puzzled. Why would they treat her to such a feast? If her brother had brought this food back from the ovens, then there shouldn't be so many people gathered around her. Could something have happened? No need. He smiled, then his expression turned serious. "Actually, we came here to ask you to save Director Liu. As long as you're willing to save him, we can discuss any conditions you have." Hearing this, Fengjiu paused in the middle of eating. Director Liu. He collapsed. As she spoke, she stuffed more food into her mouth. In her mind, she was thinking, so it's because of this. But why did they think of coming to find her? Just because she reminded them that day. Guan Shilin cut the roasted meat for her as he said, "Yes. I heard that Instructor Liu collapsed during class. The academy's pharmacists and doctors all went to see him. He's in a critical condition. He's been notified that he won't live for more than a few hours. Right now, he only has 4 hours left." Fengjiu drank half a bowl of chicken soup. Her eyes flashed, but she didn't say anything. She just listened. Guan Shilin told Fengzhou the gist of what had happened. In the end, he said, I saw the dean and the others waiting outside for 4 hours, so I took the vice dean's order and went to the ovens to bring you some food. Hearing this, Fengzhou more or less understood what had happened. She put down the bowl in her hand and wiped her mouth. She looked at the dean and the vice dean. So you two know. She didn't say what they knew, but she knew that they understood. Don't worry, we won't mention anything else. Even if he cured Director Liu, everyone would only know that he had medical skills. They wouldn't associate him with the ghost doctor. After all, no one would have thought that the ghost doctor would come to their academy. But even if they knew that the ghost doctor had the ability to bring the dead back to life, Director Liu's situation was also unusual. Would he be able to save him? I'll go take a look first. She stood up and said, we have to see how the situation is before we know whether he can be saved or not. Time is limited, so let's not waste any more time. As she spoke, she took off Flying Feather from her waist and threw it into the air. She then sat on Flying Feather and headed to the teaching office. And the dean and vice dean hurriedly followed her. After they left, Yi Jing looked at Guan Shilin and asked, Fengzhou, do you really have a way? Little Nine said that it depends on the situation. He gave some of the roasted meat to Lao Bai, the cloud-swallowing beast, and the big black bear. As for the spirit chicken ginseng soup, he brought it into Fengzhou's cave, intending to give it to her to nourish her body. 2. Okay. Yi Jing nodded and walked with him. When they arrived at the teaching office, Fengzhou walked in under Director Liu's angry glare. She went to the bed where Director Liu was lying and carefully examined his condition. His cerebral vessels are damaged, and his brain is bleeding. It's quite serious, she said calmly as she unbuttoned his clothes and checked his liver. Chapter 723. Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes flickered, revealing a smile. I can save him, and saving his life shouldn't be a problem, but it's hard to say how well he'll recover. We can guarantee a cure, but we can't guarantee a good recovery. As long as he can keep his life, the rest will depend on his own luck. As the director spoke, he looked at Fengzhou and asked, how do we save him? Do we need any spiritual medicine or something? Well, her voice trailed off as the corners of her lips curled. She looked at the director and said, if we want to save him, we'll have to clean up the blood in his brain first, so I'll have to make a hole in his head to clean up the congealed blood clots. I don't need any spiritual medicine at the moment, but I'll need 2 assistants. Director, call those 2 doctors in to help me. Hearing this, not only was the vice director stunned, even the director was stunned. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Make a hole in his head. Will this work? He had never heard of a hole in the head. The head was fragile and fatal, so how could she make a hole in it? This wasn't a joke, right? Time is limited. Have those 2 doctors change into clean clothes, wash their hands, and bring them in. Fengzhou ignored the 2 stunned people and said to the dumbfounded teacher Liu, please have someone bring in some clean water. However, no one responded to her words, nor did anyone move. She couldn't help but frown as she looked at the director and vice director. Are we saving this person or not? If not, I'm leaving. Hearing this, the 3 people in the room suddenly came back to their senses. Before the director and vice director could speak, they heard teacher Liu ask in disbelief, make a hole in his head? Can this person still live? Hearing this, Fengzhou raised her eyebrows, doubting my medical skills. Since you don't believe me, why did you call me here? She had originally planned to change her clothes, but her expression turned cold as she turned to leave. Doubting a doctor's medical skills was an insult to them. It wasn't like she had to save someone. Since they didn't believe her, why should she stay? Seeing Fengzhou turn to leave with a cold face, the director and vice director came back to their senses. Thinking of his identity as the ghost doctor, their hearts trembled as they hurriedly chased after him. Fengzhou, we believe you. If we didn't believe you, we wouldn't have asked you to save him. The vice director blocked Fengzhou and smiled apologetically. Teacher Lu, don't take her words to heart. It's not that we don't believe you, but we've never heard of this kind of treatment method, so we're a bit scared. That's right, Fengzhou. Time is of the essence. Please treat Director Lu as soon as possible. The dean also spoke, apologizing for their previous hesitation and doubt. Teacher Lu means Teacher Lu, Teacher Lu said. Teachers, Fengzhou, teacher. Seeing the director and vice director like this, Teacher Lu knew she had said the wrong thing. She walked in front of Fengzhou and bowed to him. She said apologetically, I was only worried about old Lu. I didn't mean anything else. If my words made you angry, I apologize. I'm sorry. Fengzhou's eyes moved slightly. He didn't think that Teacher Lu would apologize so quickly. Chapter 724. Hearing this, Fengzhou, who was still a bit angry, burst into laughter. She glanced at the vice head, who was standing in front of her, and said with a faint smile, Vice head, you're quite a fast learner. Hee, there's nothing I can do about it. Don't you like good food? There are plenty of delicacies in the ovens that you can't eat outside. The vice head laughed awkwardly. He hadn't expected that there would be a day when he'd have to use good food to keep someone here. All right then. Hurry up and call him in. She turned and walked back inside. Actually, she hadn't wanted to leave the moment Director Lu apologized. Although she didn't have much contact with Director Lu, she had heard from the academy's students and teachers that he was a strict and serious person. Seeing such a serious teacher become like this, she really couldn't say that she would stand by and do nothing. What's more, Director Lu had apologized to her. She had no reason to throw away her responsibility and leave. When they saw Fengzhou return, they were delighted. They hurriedly called over 2 doctors and gave them instructions. Only then did they have them change into new clothes and go in to assist Fengzhou. At that moment, Guan Shilin and Yi Jing also arrived outside. However, they weren't allowed to approach the teaching area. In the teaching office, Feng Jieyu changed her clothes and washed her hands. She took out some tools from her space and looked at the 2 doctors. She asked, Did the dean tell the 2 of you? Listen to my commands and don't let out any screams that might disturb me. At the same time, don't tell anyone what you've seen here. Yes, we understand. The dean already told us. The 2 doctors nodded in agreement. Inwardly, they were doubtful. Did the students of the pill department really have the medical skills to save Director Lu? Let them see if my brother is outside. Tell him to change his clothes and wash his hands before coming in. Hearing this, one of the doctors walked out and gave the order. Not long after, Guan Shilin walked in. Xiao Zhou, do you need my help with anything? Guan Shilin asked. He walked to the bedside and glanced at Director Lu, then at Fengzhou. Fengzhou looked up at him and smiled. Brother, you have a heavy responsibility. Remember to wipe my sweat when I perform the surgery. Don't let it drip down. No problem, Guan Shilin said with a smile. The door to the teaching area was closed, hiding everything inside. The people outside only knew that the student named Fengzhou was treating Director Lu, but didn't know how. The dean and the vice head who stood outside looked at each other, worried and nervous. They'd long, of course. Doctor, of course, but they had never seen his medical skills for themselves, of course. No doctor could guarantee, of course. How? Director Lu. They could only wait for the results of the treatment. Does Feng 9 really have medical skills? Why would the dean and the others believe him? That's right. He's a student of the Pill Institute just like us. How could he dare to treat someone who couldn't be cured by the Pill Institute's pharmacists and doctors? I think the dean and the others are just trying to make a last resort. The vice head went to the black market and didn't find the ghost doctor's whereabouts, so he could only let Fingzhou try. That kid is bold. Isn't he afraid that Director Liu will die in his hands? Outside the teaching area, the people waiting were discussing while paying attention to the movements inside. However, 2 hours passed, and there was still no movement. 4 hours passed, and there was still no movement. Chapter 725. The moment the door opened, the dean, the vice academy head, and Director Liu quickly turned around to see Fingzhou and Guan Shilin, dressed in green, walking out together. Their expressions were indifferent, and there was nothing special about them. However, when they saw the two doctors, their hearts couldn't help but sink. Could it be that he still couldn't be saved? 8 hours. According to what Imochen said, Director Liu should have been dead for 4 hours. Dean, Vice Academy Head, Director Liu is inside. I've already instructed the two doctors to take care of him. You can handle the rest as you see fit. There shouldn't be anything else for me to do here, so I'll head back first. Fingzhou said, and walked out with Guan Shilin. When the three heard Fingzhou's words, their hearts thumped. Was Director Liu really dead? Did he want them to take care of his funeral? Thinking of this, they hurriedly walked inside. When they were outside, Fingzhou said to Guan Shilin and Yi Jing, I can't take it anymore. I didn't get enough sleep this morning, and now I've been working for 8 hours. I have to go back and make up for it. Okay, then go back and rest quickly. I won't disturb you today. I'll find you tomorrow afternoon. Guan Shilin smiled, and gestured for her to go back quickly. Okay, then I'll go first. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Jing, who looked like she wanted to say something but was hesitating. She smiled and said, Don't worry, Director Liu is fine. The operation was very successful. I've already instructed the two doctors to take care of the rest. He should wake up in 2 days. If he recovers well, he should be able to get out of bed and walk around in half a month. Hearing this, Yi Jing's tensed heart finally relaxed. She looked at Fingzhou, took her hand, and said gratefully, Thank you, Fingzhou. No need to thank me. She waved her hand and smiled. Then, she sat on the flying feather and headed toward her immortal's cave. She sighed softly in her heart, I feel that cultivating in this academy is really too busy. There are so many things that I can't even get a good night's sleep. If I'm not careful, I'm afraid that even my immortal's cave might be blown up. At the same time, when Santian, who had entered to check on the situation, saw the pale faces and trembling lips of the two doctors, he could not help but stop in his tracks. How is Director Liu? The president asked, his gaze falling on the two doctors. When the two doctors saw them, they could not help but exhale softly. They calmed themselves down and said, Don't worry, Director Liu is fine. I'm fine. Are you really all right? The vice president raised his voice slightly and pointed at the person lying on the bed behind them in disbelief. Is there a hole in his head? Are you all right? Hearing the deputy hospital director mention this, the two doctors' faces paled even more, but they still nodded. Yes, Fengzhou said that he's fine. His life is saved and he'll wake up in 2 days. If he recovers well, he'll be able to get out of bed in half a month. Director Liu was fine, but something had almost happened to the two of them. They had never seen anyone who dared open a hole in someone's head. When they'd seen that scene, their legs had gone weak. Director Liu's life was saved, but the two of them had been holding on from the beginning to the end. They had not fainted from fright. Even though they did not want to admit it, they had to admit that this student called Fingzhou's medical skills were really good. While they were terrified, they were also shocked and shaken. They knew very well that this was a medical technique that they had never seen before. It was a medical technique that was unknown to the world, a medical technique that was controlled by someone else. They even had a trace of doubt in their hearts. Chapter 726. News of Director Lu's survival quickly spread. Everyone in the academy knew that it was Fengzhou who had saved him. However, no one expected that the mediocre Fengzhou would have medical skills that surpassed those of the academy's 2 doctors. The students were curious as to how he had treated Director Lu. However, no matter how much they asked, they couldn't find out anything. They only knew that Director Lu's life was saved. Aside from the 2 doctors, only the dean, the vice dean, and Director Lu were allowed to visit Director Lu. Thus, even the other instructors didn't know what was going on inside. Unlike here, Fengzhou slept all the way until noon the next day. The oven sent someone to deliver food to her. She, Guan Shilin, and Yi Jing ate at a new stone table under a tree. After clearing away the food on the table, they placed tea on the table and chatted. It wasn't until the dean and vice dean arrived that Yi Jing and Guan Shilin left. Dean, vice dean, why are you here? Don't tell me something happened. Seeing the 2 of them, she instinctively felt that something troublesome had happened. Seeing this, the 2 of them couldn't help but smile. Today, we're here to talk to you. They sat down and looked at the youth in front of them. What do you want to talk about? She poured them a cup of tea. Forgive me for being blunt, but with your reputation as the ghost doctor, why would you come to Star Cloud? The dean asked directly. Of course I'm here to learn alchemy. She said matter-of-factly, then shook her head. I just didn't expect that Star Cloud's alchemy department would have only 1 student. I still have to earn contribution points, and the instructor's alchemy skills don't seem very high either. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed. Hearing this, the 2 of them paused for a moment, then smiled. It's not that the alchemy department doesn't have any high-level instructors. It's just that there haven't been any students participating in the alchemy assembly for several years now, so some of the high-level alchemists have been poached away by other schools. Now, in addition to the 2 alchemists, there's also a pill ancestor. However, the pill ancestor's status is extraordinary, so he usually doesn't appear to teach students. The students are all taught by the 2 alchemists. Grandmaster of Alchemy. Her eyes flickered and she asked, is that the man in white who looks like an immortal? She had only seen that guy concocting pills, and it was not a low-grade pill. She guessed that he should be a teacher. Perhaps he was the alchemy grandmaster that the 2 of them were talking about. White-robed banished immortal. The dean and the vice dean looked at each other, slightly startled. They smiled and shook their heads. No, the person you're talking about should be young Master Mo Chin. He's our guest, not an alchemist of the academy. However, his alchemy skills are indeed very outstanding. Even in a first-class country, there are very few people like him. Speaking up to this point, the dean smiled and said, today, besides thanking you, I also want to ask what kind of remuneration you need. As long as the academy has it, we can accept it. Hearing this, Fengzhou smiled and raised his eyebrows. Didn't I already pay you? Just give me 3 meals a day in Star Cloud. Hearing this, the 2 of them were slightly stunned. How can that be? How about this? Before they could finish speaking, he waved his hand and interrupted them. If I say it's okay, then it's okay. However, my identity as the ghost doctor, you have to keep it a secret. Just don't tell anyone about it. I don't want people coming to me every 2 to 3 days to ask for medicine. Chapter 727. Don't worry, we know. The 2 smiled as they spoke, their hearts filled with emotion. Although he saved people based on his mood, they couldn't help but admire him for being able to disregard former enmity and save Director Lu's life without asking for a reward. In the end, although the 2 didn't mention the matter of reward, they kept it in mind and did their best to help him in other aspects. After chatting for a while, the 2 got up and said their goodbyes. Before leaving, the vice dean seemed to recall something and turned around. Fengzhou, I heard that Ouyang Xiu issued a challenge to you. Yes, that seems to be the case. She nodded. When the dean and vice dean heard this, their mouths couldn't help but twitch. From his words, it was clear that he didn't take the matter to heart. However, even if he didn't take it to heart, that didn't necessarily mean that Ouyang Xiu didn't take it to heart. He was probably preparing to meet him on the storm platform in 3 days. Well, that's that then. If there's any trouble you can't solve, come find us. With that, the two stepped onto their flying swords and left. After they left, Fingzhou looked at the token that the dean had given her. It was said that with this thing, she could enter and leave the academy at will. Moreover, with this token in hand, there were many conveniences. I really made a killing, she thought. Not only did I save Director Liu, but the ovens will be able to cook for her, and I even got this thing. It really was a good deal. Smiling, she put the command medallion away and returned to her immortal's cave to work on her cultivation. She didn't put the matter of the challenge in her heart. However, on Ouyang Xiu's side, 3 days had passed. He was wearing a white academy uniform and had been waiting on the storm platform since early in the morning. The platform was filled with students from the Spiritual Academy and the Xian Academy, all of them filled with anticipation. Although they didn't think that Fingzhou would dare to fight, they still hoped that he would. This way, they would be able to see him being taught a lesson by Ouyang Xiu. However, as time passed, more and more students gathered, waiting to see the challenge. Ouyang Xiu was still standing on the platform, but the green-robed youth was nowhere to be seen. Fingzhou won't not come, right? That's possible. That brat looks like a coward. He has heard of how powerful Senior Ouyang is. How would he dare to accept the challenge? That's true. He probably doesn't dare to accept the challenge and is hiding. What a pity, I was hoping to see him being taught a lesson by Ouyang Senior. Hearing everyone's discussion, a student lowered his voice and said, "Let's just talk about it here. Don't let the mentors hear it. Otherwise, you'll be severely punished." Why? Don't tell me you're not allowed to speak. The other person disagreed. Haven't you heard? Director Liu woke up this morning, and now the mentors are convinced of Fingzhou's medical skills. They are all protecting him. If they hear us saying that we hope Fingzhou will be fixed, do you think they won't fix us? Ah. Is Director Liu really awake? Yes. She's awake. This morning, the director and the deputy director went over to take a look. I didn't expect this. That brat really does have some skills. Isn't that so? It said that the 2 doctors from the academy were only his assistants that day. TSK, how big of a face is that? Even my family can't invite the doctors from the academy, but they actually went to assist that brat. Chapter 728. Don't tell me he went to Fingzhou's place to look for trouble. TSK. If that brat is hiding in his cave, even Senior Ouyang won't be able to do anything. His barrier is very strong. It said that if he sees the brat sleeping, he can set up a soundproof barrier. No matter how noisy it is outside, he won't be disturbed inside. Let's go and take a look. As the students spoke, they followed behind them and headed towards Fingzhou's cave. Guan Shilin, who had heard the news, did not pay attention to it. It would be useless even if that Ouyang Xiu went. Xiao Jiu had no intention of competing with him. Moreover, he was only in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. He was no match for Xiao Jiu. The news that Ouyang Xiu went to Fingzhou's cave spread quickly. The mentors, the dean, and the vice-headmaster also heard the news, but they did not pay attention to it. They felt that it was better for the young people to settle this matter themselves. As everyone expected, when Ouyang Xiu arrived at Fingzhou's cave, he did not see anyone at all. The 3 beasts guarding outside the cave only glanced at him, then found a place to hang around. Ouyang Xiu did not leave when he did not see anyone from Fingzhou. Instead, he sat down cross-legged outside the cave and closed his eyes to rest. He planned to guard here until he came out. When Yi Jing heard the news, she saw him sitting cross-legged outside the cave. Seeing that he had no intention of leaving, she hesitated for a moment, then went forward and called out, "Senior Ouyang." The whole school knew that he liked her, but she did not have that kind of feeling towards him. Like the other students, she also thought that he challenged Fingzhou because of her. She had already told him that she had no feelings for him. He also said that he knew what to do in the future. So why did he still challenge Fingzhou? Ouyang Xiu opened his eyes and looked at Yi Jing. Before she could speak, he said, "I challenged him not because of you." Hearing this, Yi Jing sighed in relief and said softly, "She won't accept the challenge." To her, accepting a challenge is troublesome. She hates trouble. "You seem to know him very well." He looked at her and asked, "Do you like him?" Hearing this, Yi Jing smiled. "She's my friend." "Then you should persuade him to come out and fight me. Otherwise, I won't leave." He spoke in a low voice, his gaze landing on the cave abode in front of him. When he first met the youth, he only wanted to see what kind of person this Fingzhou was. However, when he saw him, he had the urge to fight him. His intuition told him that he was definitely not an ordinary student. Yi Jing shook her head. "I can't do that. If you want to wait here, then wait. But in the end, you're just wasting your time here." With that, she glanced at the cave and left. Seeing this, Ouyang Xiu closed his eyes and ignored him. Instead, he sat cross-legged and meditated. Some of the students who had followed them saw this and left one after another. It seemed that Ouyang Xiu was planning to stay in front of the cave abode. However, it seemed that Fingzhou would not come out either. These two people had the time to waste here, but they did not. In the evening, when it was time for dinner, the boundary opened. Fingzhou, dressed in green, walked out, stretching. When he saw the figure sitting in front of the cave abode, he was shocked. Chapter 729. Ouyang Xiu looked at the green-clothed youth and said with a dark expression, "Did you forget that I challenged you?" Hearing this, Fingzhou grinned, "I didn't forget, but I didn't accept it either." Hearing this, he stood up and stared at the green-clothed youth with a sharp gaze. "You're not weak, so why didn't you accept my challenge?" "If I didn't accept it, then I didn't accept it. Why do you have to ask so many questions?" She rolled her eyes and walked past him to sit at the stone table under the tree. She gently tapped her hands on the table and looked in the direction of the food delivery. Seeing this, Ouyang Xiu's spiritual energy surged, intending to force him to make a move. However, just as his spiritual energy surged, before he could get close to the green-clothed youth sitting under the tree, he heard him call out casually, "Xiao Hei." As soon as the lazy voice fell, the big black bear that was originally squatting in a daze suddenly stood up and pounced at him. The ferocity of its momentum made him almost unable to dodge. He lifted his sleeve and looked at the scratches made by the bear's claws. His sharp gaze moved and in the next moment, he attacked the big black bear. Under the tree, Fingzhou turned his head and rested his chin on his hand as he watched the battle between the man and the bear. He saw that Ouyang Xiu's movements were nimble and his attacks were fierce. Although he was fighting barehanded, the spiritual energy surging in his hands was like a sharp sword. It was so sharp that it made whooshing sounds in the air. Roar! Xiao Hei roared and released the pressure of a holy beast, causing him to retreat a few steps. Ouyang Xiu's face darkened. Even though he was a Foundation Establishment stage cultivator, he could only barely fight back against a holy beast. Under the pressure of a holy beast, his body stiffened and his speed slowed down. Xiao Hei had Fingzhou's instructions and would not really hurt him. Therefore, he was just teasing him. Under the tree, when Feng Jiu saw the person who came to deliver food not far away, her eyes lit up. Her figure flashed and rushed toward the person. After taking the 3-layer lunchbox from his hand, she directly returned to the cave residence and closed the enchantment. Seeing this, Ouyang Xiao was furious. Fengzhou, come out. This was the first time he had ever seen someone avoid a challenge and let his pet beast do it. Unfortunately, his pet beast wasn't just any ordinary pet beast. It was a holy beast, equivalent to a golden core cultivator. How could a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator like him possibly defeat it? Lao Bai had a piece of cloth tied around its mouth. Fengzhou had specially tied it around its mouth to prevent it from speaking. At this moment, it was looking at Ouyang Xiao, who was in a sorry state after the battle with Xiao He, and it let out a muffled cry. Ouyang Xiao didn't understand. If he did, he would know that it was saying, "You can't even defeat Little Black, yet you want to fight with its master." He was simply asking for a beating. In the end, Ouyang Xiao was driven away by Blackie and left angrily. When he first met Fengzhou, he just wanted to see what kind of person this young man was. But after seeing this young man, he had the urge to fight him. After waiting for half a day on the storm platform and seeing no one, he went to the cave to stop him. Who knew that he would send a big black bear to trick him? Not only did this not extinguish his desire to fight, but it also made him even more eager to fight him. It didn't matter if he didn't have a chance today. He would definitely find a chance to compete with him. Chapter 730. The purple-robed man stopped at the side gate of the spiritual academy, turned around and said to the group of escorts, "You can go back now." "Yes." The group of escorts replied. They watched as the purple-robed man took out his identity token and entered the academy before turning around and leaving. Although the sky was gradually turning dark, there were still quite a few students walking about within the spiritual academy, chatting in groups of 3 to 5. When they saw the figure that had appeared within the spiritual academy, the students that were originally sitting on the grass immediately stood up and respectfully gave a bow towards him. "Greetings, Senior Nya." "Senior Nya, you're back." "Senior Nya, it's great that you're back." The students all gathered around. Even though they were all students of the spiritual academy, when they saw this person, they couldn't help but show a respectful and flattering expression. This was because, not only was he a heaven-ranked student of their spiritual academy, he was also the number 1 of the 10 heavenly prides, Enchanting. Other than being the number 1 in the School of Stars and Clouds, he was also the crown prince of the Greenton Kingdom, a student that was highly regarded by the dean and the rest. The dean once said that among the students of the School of Stars and Clouds, Enchanting had the highest chance of entering the Golden Core stage within 50 years. Because of this, he had a large number of supporters in the academy. Regardless of whether it was the Spiritual Academy or the Xian Academy, there were students who secretly supported him. Although the academy had already started for some time, it was said that he was entangled with some matters and couldn't return to the academy for a while, which was why he delayed his return. Now that everyone saw him return, they were all filled with joy. They all told him about the things that happened in the academy during his absence. "Senior Nya, Fengzhou has only been in the academy for a few months, but he has become a famous figure in the academy. When his name is mentioned, everyone knows who he is." Enchanting, who was surrounded by the crowd, had a cold and indifferent expression. He was originally quietly listening to the people around him talk about the recent events. However, when he heard that name, his heart trembled and he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His sharp gaze instantly turned towards the student who spoke. "Who are you talking about?" "Fengzhou." "Yes, it's Fengzhou. That brat is a new student of the alchemy department this year, but he has attracted the attention of the instructors and deans of the various departments." "That's right. His fame has almost surpassed the top 10 prodigies of the academy. Senior Ouyang challenged him 3 days ago and asked him to fight on the storm platform. Who knew that he would hide like a coward in his cave, not daring to come out? That kid knows that he is no match for Senior Ouyang. Of course, he doesn't dare to accept the challenge. If he knew that the #1 prodigy of our academy, Senior Nya, had returned, he would definitely be so scared that he would hide in that cave and not dare to come out. Ha ha ha, that's right. Enchanting could no longer hear what the students around him were saying. There was a loud bang in his head, and only one message echoed in his head. Fengzhou. That woman was actually in the School of Stars and Clouds. Moreover, a woman disguised as a man to sneak in. Was it really her? Or was it just the same name? At this moment, his heart, which had been calm for a long time, rose and fell again because of her news. Anticipation, excitement, joy, and uncontrollable joy filled his heart. Chapter 731. The next morning, Enchanting, who had changed into his uniform, arrived at the peak of the alchemy department under the guidance of a student. He did not approach and only looked from afar. The morning air in the mountain forest was fragrant. The leaves swayed gently in the wind, and the birds on the branches jumped happily, chirping. The cave was quiet, and there was no movement at all. Under the big tree in front of the cave, a big black bear was squatting, and a strange old horse was lying on the grass, wagging its tail. Seeing the familiar white horse, his eyes narrowed, and his heart skipped a beat. It really was her. Even if he did not see her, her steed, Lao Bai, was there. She must be here as well. He thought that he would never see her again, but unexpectedly, they were in the same academy, and he was a student of the same academy. At this moment, his silent heart seemed to come alive, and began to beat again. He did not stay for long, and only turned to leave after confirming. Not long after he left, Fengzhou, who was in the cave, took off her green clothes and changed into a red robe. After instructing the 3 beasts to guard the cave, she went to the Xian Academy and the Spiritual Academy, planning to ask her brother and Yi Jing to go out with her. However, when she arrived at the Xian Academy, she was told that her brother had gone to spar with some students of the Xian Academy. Thus, she went to Yi Jing's courtyard. Fengzhou. Why are you here? Yi Jing was surprised to see her. She winked at her and said, I came to ask if you want to go with me to the city. As she spoke, she tossed the token in her hand. Yi Jing was surprised. You actually got the dean's token. The dean gave it to me. Do you want to go? Yes, of course. She smiled and said, wait for me, I'll go in and change. As she spoke, she quickly went in. 2 hours later, the two of them arrived at Star Cloud City. Their outstanding appearance and elegant temperament attracted the attention of many passers-by. Even though the city was filled with heroes, their appearance and temperament still made them look like cranes in a flock of chickens. They were very dazzling. Let's find a place to eat first, then go shopping. Fengzhou said. The first thing she thought of was not anything else, but delicious food. I'm more familiar with the city, I'll take you to one. They make the most authentic dishes here. Yi Jing said as she led her through the main street and into another alley. As they passed through the alley, a tall and thin middle-aged man walked towards them. He was dressed in brocade clothes. As he walked, he looked at the small stall on the ground of the alley. When he saw the 2 people in front of him, his eyes lit up. His gaze fell on the gentle and moving Yi Jing in a light blue dress. Although it was an alley, it wasn't small. Other than the stalls on both sides, there were still about 3 people walking side by side in the middle. Yi Jing and Fengzhou chatted as they walked. Fengzhou's gaze was focused on the small stalls on the ground. Other than some trinkets, there were also some medicinal herbs. Although Yi Jing was looking ahead, she also noticed the tall and thin middle-aged man's gaze. However, she didn't care. As they walked past each other, she had already taken a step towards Fengzhou to avoid the middle-aged man. However, the 2 people who shouldn't have bumped into each other were accidentally bumped into by the middle-aged man when they brushed past each other. Chapter 732. What's wrong? Fengjiu turned around to look at her and saw her glaring angrily at the tall and thin man who was walking away. His gaze fell on the man and sized him up. Nothing, let's go. She suppressed the anger in her heart and retracted her gaze. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't notice and didn't know what happened. However, seeing that she didn't say anything, he felt that it shouldn't be a big matter and didn't ask any further. However, when the two of them walked back after eating, intending to check out the elixir shop, they bumped into the tall and thin middle-aged man from before on the main street. At a stall on the main street, a fat woman in her 30s wearing a flowery dress was pointing at the vendor and cursing angrily with one hand on her waist. There were many onlookers surrounding her and the tall and thin middle-aged man was squeezing around the woman by the side, seemingly unintentionally raising his hand to rub against the woman's chest. Seeing this, her eyes turned cold. She immediately recalled that when they brushed past each other in the alley earlier, this middle-aged man must have used the same trick to take advantage of Yi Jing. Sure enough, she glanced at Yi Jing beside her and saw that her expression had turned cold. People like this should be taught a lesson every time we meet. I didn't know earlier, but if I did, I definitely wouldn't let him out of that alley. Fengjiu said as his gaze fell on the tall and thin middle-aged man. I avoided it, but I'm still a little angry. Her appearance was not bad, but because of her good background and her own cultivation, most people wouldn't dare to take advantage of her and she had never met such an old wretched man. In her opinion, people of this age wouldn't do such a shameless thing. However, it was obvious that she had never met such a person before. It didn't mean that such a person didn't exist. Look at me. Fengjiu smiled at her and stepped into the lively crowd in front of her. She also squeezed in and came to the side of the tall and thin middle-aged man. Seeing that he was pretending to lean forward to watch the fun, but secretly using his hand to rub the woman next to him, she couldn't help curling her lips. She stretched out her hand and directly pinched the fat woman's buttocks who was cursing with her hands on her waist. Then, she quietly took a step back. The expression of the fat woman, who was cursing loudly, froze. Her face, which was already filled with anger, became even more furious. When she suddenly turned around, she just happened to see the tall and thin man behind her glancing at a woman beside him from the corner of his eyes. He raised his elbow and seemingly inadvertently bumped into the woman's chest. Seeing this, she angrily glared at him. Her bright red lips were like a bloody mouth as she cursed, "You son of a bitch, you son of a bitch. You dare to take advantage of me, I think you're tired of living." She grabbed his collar with one hand and pulled him in front of her, spitting saliva everywhere as she cursed, "Is my fat arm something that just anyone can touch? You old thing, why don't you take a piss and look at your own wretched appearance? You're still squeezing and bumping into women. See if I don't teach you a lesson." As she cursed, she angrily lifted the tall and thin man into the air with both hands and prepared to slam him to the ground. The tall and thin man was shocked and his expression changed greatly. Don't mess around, don't mess around. Ah. Chapter 733. The stunned crowd only heard a loud bang from the ground. When the fat woman landed heavily on the tall, thin man's stomach, they could faintly feel the ground shake. Pooh! The tall, thin man didn't scream because he couldn't even scream. When the fat woman landed heavily on his stomach, he only spat out white foam from his mouth. His face turned deathly pale, and he couldn't even make a sound. That's right, he was at most 90 kilograms, while the fat woman in her 30s was close to 200 kilograms. Just her weight alone was enough to make someone half dead, let alone when she landed on him so heavily. Spitting out white foam was already considered light. Not far away, Yi Jing watched with her mouth slightly agape. Her face was filled with shock and astonishment. Even when Fengjiu came to her side, she still hadn't recovered from her shock. How is it? I don't even need to lift a finger to take care of people. Once I vent my anger, I save energy. Fengzhou's eyes were smiling. His chin was slightly raised, and his handsome face exuded a dazzling and soaring spirit. His entire person looked so dazzling and captivating that it attracted the gazes of some of the young women around him. They couldn't look away for a long time. Xiao! The sound of a cold weapon suddenly came with a whoosh. This sound didn't stand out in the bustling street. It could even be said that the sharp sound of the air flow was almost drowned out by the clamor of the street. When Yi Jing heard Fengzhou's words, she couldn't help but smile. Her originally low mood was lifted when she saw the tall, thin man being taught a lesson. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Fengzhou's expression suddenly change. Without waiting for her to ask or react, he was hugged by her and instantly retreated to the right. Xiao! Bang! The sharp air flow swept past with a whoosh and landed on the main pillar of the shop behind Fengzhou with a bang. Seeing this scene, Yi Jing's expression changed, and she felt a lingering fear in her heart. She didn't even hear that sound, nor did she sense it. If Fengzhou hadn't brought her away, that cold weapon would have definitely landed on Fengzhou's body. Withdrawing the smile on her face, Feng Zhuqing, who had a cold expression on her face, had a cold glint in her eyes. She glanced at the sleeve arrow nailed to the pillar and said to Yi Jing, "They are here for me. You should return to the academy first." In her heart, she was thinking, who was it? Who did this to her? That arrow was only to test her reaction and not to take her life. She was certain that the person who shot the arrow was at least a golden core cultivator, but the arrow shot only 30% of its power. At this moment, 12 black-clothed people rushed out from the shadows. 8 of them held long swords that glinted with a cold light and overflowed with killing intent. Their sharp and cold gazes fell on the red-clothed Fengzhou one by one. As soon as they appeared, their sharp killing intent swept through the entire street. The powerful pressure instantly froze the air. The aura of death enveloped the world with the arrival of powerful cultivators, causing everyone to scream in panic and scramble to escape to a safe place to hide. 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators. What a big move. She coldly snorted and her gaze fell on the 12 people. At the same time, she pushed the stunned Yi Jing behind her. "Let's go," she shouted in a low voice. If she knew that they would be ambushed, she definitely wouldn't have brought Yi Jing out. Chapter 734. Especially when she heard that there were 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators, she was even more terrified. Under this kind of battle strength, under this kind of ambush, how could she have a chance of survival? In her family, only the ancestor of her family had a nascent soul cultivation. But now, there were 4 nascent soul cultivators and 8 golden core cultivators all at once. The shock of this kind of expert's arrival, this kind of murderous aura and pressure made her unable to move her legs, let alone leave. She was only a 3rd stage Great Spirit Master cultivator, not even a Foundation Establishment cultivator. Under this kind of pressure, it was already considered good that the bloodline aura in her body did not go berserk. "Fengzhou, I can't leave." She resisted the pressure and spat out these words with difficulty. At this moment, she deeply understood that it was stupid to say anything about fighting side by side with Fengzhou. She could only hurry back to the academy to ask for help, perhaps only then would she be able to save Fengzhou's life. Hearing this, Fengzhou glanced back and saw her pale face, blood seeping out of the corner of her mouth, and cold sweat rolling down her forehead. He immediately gathered spiritual energy in his palm and reached out to support her, sending her dozens of meters away. Yi Jing looked at him deeply and did not say anything. She quickly gathered her energy and left, flying back to the academy. The 12 people did not care about Yi Jing's departure. Perhaps they felt that she was not worth their attention, or perhaps they felt that even if she brought reinforcements, they would not be a match for them. Their mission, in their eyes, was only this person called Fengzhou. "Are you going to obediently come with us? Or do you want us to take action?" One of the four nascent soul cultivators in the lead spoke in a deep voice, his sharp and cold gaze fixed on the red-clothed youth. "Who sent you here?" she asked, quickly calculating her chances of survival. Also, who had sent these people? There were 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators among the people sent here. It was obvious that they had assessed her strength. If they were only golden core cultivators, it would be fine. However, the 4 nascent soul cultivators were the worst. Although she was confident, she was not arrogant. With her strength, it was impossible for her to deal with these people in front of her. Furthermore, even if Yi Jing were to return to the academy and ask for help, the headmaster and the vice-headmaster would not be a match for these people. Damn it! She had never provoked such a powerful force before. However, as soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he was suddenly startled. His eyes were filled with astonishment and understanding. "You are from the 8 great empires." It wasn't a question, but a confirmation. Only a force like the 8 great empires could casually bring out 8 Jindan stage cultivators and 4 Yuanying stage cultivators, and they said that they would go with them. Could it be that Xianyuan Mose had encountered something troublesome? Was that why these people were thinking about her? Only the people from the 8 great empires would dare to act so arrogantly in broad daylight. They were not afraid of alerting the governor of Star Cloud City or the headmaster of the academy. They were arrogant, conceited, and condescending. They did not place anyone in their eyes at all. When they heard Fingzhou mention the 8 great empires, the eyes of the 4 nascent soul cultivators in the lead moved slightly. They raised their hands and the 8 golden core cultivators behind them turned their sharp swords. The long swords glinted with a cold light and carried a sharp air current as they attacked the red figure in front of them. Chapter 735. With such a huge disparity in strength, forcing herself to fight would only lead to her own death. She would not lose her life because of her impulsiveness. Although she seemed to be fleeing in a panic, she was actually fleeing in the direction of a dense forest in the east of the city. Even if a battle was unavoidable in the end, she hoped that she could minimize the damage. Otherwise, once she started fighting here, even if the commoners had already hidden in their houses, they would still inevitably lose their lives under the pressure and killing intent of a nascent soul stage cultivator. Escape. Humph. You can't escape. The 4 nascent soul stage cultivators in the lead snorted coldly. That heavy snort actually formed a visible airflow like ripples that attacked the fleeing Fingzhou. The pressure of the nascent soul stage instantly filled the air and directly pressed on the fleeing figure in front of them. Whoosh! Whoosh! The fierce airflow whistled behind her and she raised her speed to the maximum. Suddenly, she felt the airflow of the cultivators behind her was like a mountain pressing down on her. She immediately looked back and saw that the water-like pressure formed a fierce momentum that pounced on her. Immediately, she took off the flying feather at her waist and threw it into the air. She quickly jumped on it with the tip of her foot. "Want to catch me? Then let's see if you can catch up with me." Her voice came out from the air and instantly went far away, leaving only a lingering sound. Just as she jumped on the flying feather, the fierce airflow attack hit the ground with a bang. Boom! With a loud bang, dust and smoke flew everywhere. At the same time, the pressure and airflow also spread out. The powerful impact made a big hole in the ground and gravel flew everywhere. Some of the people hiding in the shops were so shocked that their faces turned pale. The 12 people flicked their sleeves and brushed away the dust in front of them. Looking at the red figure that was fleeing quickly, they immediately jumped on the flying sword and chased after her. Seeing those people leave, the people who were hiding came out one after another. Looking at the big hole in the street that was bombed, they swallowed their saliva and were shocked. The movement on the street was very big, and the news spread quickly. Especially here in the east of the city, the people of the black market got the news immediately. After receiving the news, the president of the black market immediately summoned the cultivators above the gold core stage and 2 nascent soul stage elders in the black market. Looking at the 8 people sitting in the meeting hall, President Gong's expression was solemn. I've just received news that 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators have attacked a young man in red on the eastern main street. According to the description of the people, this young man in red is very likely to be the ghost doctor who holds a first-class black token in our black market. The people said that they went to the dense forest in the east. I plan to bring people to help. Who is willing to go with me? Hearing this, the people sitting below were stunned and shocked. 8 multicore cultivators and 4 Yuanying stage powerhouses. Chasing after the ghost doctor. Who among them was willing to go and save him? Their branch only had 6 golden core adepts and 2 nascent soul stage elders. Altogether, there were only 8 people. Even if the president was included, there were less than 10 people. How could they fight against 8 golden core adepts and 4 nascent soul stage masters? What's more, they only said that there were 4 nascent soul cultivators, but they didn't know what level of nascent soul cultivators they were at. If they were to suddenly rush over and fail to save them and get killed instead, then, thinking of this, everyone hesitated. Chapter 736. Hearing this, President Gong's face darkened as he stood up. Saving a life is like saving a life. How can we delay it? If you don't want to go, I won't force you. After all, this is a matter of life and death. As he spoke, he walked out. However, just as he took 2 steps, an old man stood up. President, I'll go with you. An inconspicuous old man in gray robes was one of the 2 nascent soul stage elders of the black market. He was also the one who noticed Fingzhou when he came to the black market and told the president about Fingzhou. His surname was Gong and he was President Gong's uncle. His strength was at the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage. President, I'll go too. A golden core stage cultivator stood up and said. Hearing this, President Gong turned to look at the 2 of them and nodded. Let's go. With that, he went to the east side of the forest with the 2 of them. The remaining people in the meeting hall were silent and did not move. Human nature was selfish. Who would be foolish enough to send themselves to their deaths when they knew that they would most likely encounter danger? It was not easy to cultivate to their level. They cherished their lives and were unwilling to give it away. At the same time, the 12 people chased into the forest. Looking at the empty forest, the 4 nascent soul stage cultivators in the lead narrowed their eyes and shouted in a gloomy voice, "Find." Yes. The 8 golden core stage cultivators responded and immediately rushed into the forest. Each of them looked for a place, intending to find that person in the shortest time possible. One of the nascent soul stage cultivators glanced at the quiet forest and then closed his eyes. He released his divine sense to search for Fingzhou's aura. After a while, he opened his eyes and his expression darkened. How is it? Someone next to him asked. There's no aura at all. The nascent soul stage cultivator said. His voice was wooden, without any ups and downs, without any emotions. It was like a withered corpse, cold and chilling. Then find. She can't escape. Another person said. As soon as his voice fell, he had already rushed into the forest. Seeing this, the other 3 also walked in 3 different directions. There was a nascent soul cultivator searching in each of the 4 cardinal directions. Among them, there were 8 Aurus core cultivators searching in the 8 cardinal directions. With such a tight encirclement, even if Fengzhou were to hide in any corner of the forest, he would not be able to escape their search. Fengzhou didn't plan to keep hiding either. She couldn't do it alone against 12 experts, but if they were separated, she could assassinate them by herself. She had escaped to this forest because she thought that this forest could be used as a cover for her. Since these people had found her, then she had to leave no one alive. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble in the future. She took out the phoenix dagger that Xianyuan Mose had given her and held it in a reverse grip. Using the trees as cover, she looked for her target like a cheetah. When she saw a golden core stage cultivator coming in her direction, she restrained her aura, as if her whole person had merged with nature. That golden core stage cultivator's strength was above the peak. At this time, he gradually approached Fengzhou's location, but he didn't sense any dangerous aura. He also didn't know that there was a red figure hiding in the tree. Chapter 737. Blood instantly gushed out from his throat. The golden core cultivator's eyes widened as he stamped his feet. His body stiffened and his head tilted to the side as he breathed his last. Just like that, a golden core cultivator's neck was slit by her silently, not even making a sound. She quickly took off his spatial ring and sprinkled some medicinal powder on the corpse. Taking advantage of the fact that the smell of blood had yet to be blown away by the wind, she quickly retreated and once again hid in the dense forest. Another golden core cultivator who was searching the area soon followed the smell of blood and rushed over. He squatted down to check on his companion who had been killed and saw that there was only a fatal wound on his neck. The spatial ring on his hand had also been taken. In an instant, the nascent soul cultivator that was searching this area came over. Looking at the corpse on the ground, he narrowed his eyes and asked with a gloomy voice, "How did he die?" "He was killed with a single strike. The blade was facing upwards. Fengzhou must have jumped down from the tree and took advantage of our unpreparedness to kill." Before the golden core cultivator could finish speaking, his expression changed and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He didn't even have time to react before falling to the ground. Seeing this, the nascent soul cultivator's eyes narrowed and he took a step back. He tightly clenched his fists under his sleeves. What a Fengzhou! They hadn't even seen her and they had already lost 2 golden core cultivators. It was no wonder that the higher-ups had sent 4 nascent soul cultivators. That's right, if they were ordinary, how could they have caught her eye? Thinking of this, he sank his chi into his dantian and spoke with a sinister voice mixed with spiritual power. 2 golden core cultivators have died. Increase your vigilance. Don't move alone in groups of 2. Be careful of her poison. His voice spread out like ripples in the air. The pressure of a powerhouse and the aura of a powerhouse clearly spread out and echoed in the forest. It reminded the others in the forest and made them increase their vigilance. However, even with the nascent soul cultivator's warning, some golden core cultivators still didn't believe it. After all, Fengzhou was only a great spirit master cultivator. How could she kill golden core cultivators? From their point of view, the 2 golden core cultivators had underestimated the enemy and allowed Fengzhou to take advantage of the situation. Even though they didn't believe it, they still gathered together in the same area. 2 golden core cultivators formed a small group and began to search. In the forest, Fengzhou, who had also heard the nascent soul cultivator's words, locked onto a lone golden core cultivator. What I want is your lives. She put away the dagger in her hand and the azure-edged sword, which hadn't seen blood for a long time, appeared in her hand. As soon as the Qingfeng sword appeared, a bloodthirsty killing intent immediately burst forth from the sword. The sword aura surging around the sword was accompanied by threads of cold green light, instantly changing the atmosphere in the air. Chapter 738. Ancient Godly Sword Qingfeng. Seeing that sword, the eyes of the 2 golden core cultivators surged with a hint of madness. A crazy desire to take it for themselves caused them to instantly raise their swords and charge forward. Taking advantage of the fact that the few nascent soul cultivators had yet to arrive, they wanted to snatch the sword from her hands. Then, the sword would be theirs. At this moment, the pressure of a gold core cultivator was completely released. Around the 2 of them, a spirit force that was close to 100 feet in length instantly rose up. The fallen leaves in the forest were swept up by this spirit force, and dust filled the air as it whistled through the air. Fengzhou did not pay attention to the people behind her. At this moment, she only wanted to kill one person first, then deal with the other. Thus, when the golden core cultivators surged towards her, the spirit qi in her body also quickly circulated. The Qingfeng sword in her hand shone with a green light, and the spirit qi of the sword swept the surrounding spirit qi into the sword. A bloodthirsty killing intent accompanied the Qingfeng sword in her hand as she fiercely slashed forward. At this moment, the Qingfeng sword seemed to have expanded several times in an instant. With one slash, it broke the treasured sword in the golden core cultivator's hand. Clang! The sound of a sword breaking rang out clearly in the air. The golden core cultivator's eyes widened in fear. As he quickly retreated, he saw the giant sword fall from the sky, chopping down on his head. His breathing became sluggish, and he only had time to let out a scream. Ah! Pooh! Xiao! When the Qingfeng sword fell, it cut the golden core cultivator in half. When the golden core shattered, it exploded, and blood splattered all over the ground. However, Fengjiu did not stop. After the Qingfeng sword killed the golden core cultivator in front of her, she turned her hand and the Qingfeng sword swept back towards the person behind her. Whoosh! Xiao! The huge spirit qi of the sword swept across, swallowing the spirit qi from the sharp sword in his hand. When the two spirit qi collided, the weak was swallowed, and the strong survived. In that instant, the sword slashed across the waist, and the golden core cultivator who did not have time to react was cut in half. Xiao! There were no cries of surprise or screams of pain. There was only the upper half of the body that was sent flying dozens of meters away with blood splattering all over the ground. After taking his spatial ring, she didn't stop and quickly fled to another place. When the nearest nascent soul stage cultivator arrived and saw the bloody and cruel scene, he clenched his fists and roared to the sky, Fengjiu! Come out if you have the guts! Come out! Come out! Bang, bang, bang. At the same time, Yi Jing, who had rushed back to the academy to seek help, had shortened the 2-hour flight time to reach the academy to half an hour. When she reached the side entrance of the spiritual academy, her body was drenched in sweat and she was gasping for breath. In order to buy more time, she used her spiritual power to increase the speed of the aircraft. She wanted to hurry back and give Fengjiu a chance of survival. Yi Jing! What happened to you? Director Liu happened to pass by. Seeing her exhausted spiritual power and gasping for breath, he was shocked and quickly went forward to support her. Fengjiu is in trouble. Quick, bring me to see the dean, quick. Chapter 739. Hearing this, Director Liu's expression changed drastically. He did not ask any more questions and hurriedly brought her onto the flying sword to the dean's main peak. Some of the surrounding students saw that Yi Jing's expression was strange due to her overdraft of spirit power and had been listening attentively. When they heard Yi Jing's words, they all had strange expressions. Fengjiu was in trouble. Pfft! How difficult could it be? He must have accidentally offended someone outside and was taught a lesson. Yi Jing was the only one who was making a fuss. At this moment, no one thought that Fengjiu's life was in danger when Yi Jing said that he was in trouble. Even more so, no one thought that there would be 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators who would deal with Fengjiu. They were all gloating over his misfortune and whispering something about how it would be good if someone taught him a lesson. That brat is protected by the mentors and the dean and vice dean in the academy. Now that he's out there, he'll definitely be bruised and swollen when he comes back. He deserves it. A freshman's limelight has already overshadowed us seniors. He deserves someone to teach him a lesson. Who are you talking about? A low voice suddenly sounded behind the students who were whispering. They were so shocked that they quickly turned around. When they saw that it was Nye Ting, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Senior Nye, it's you. You gave us a fright. One of the students patted his chest and said. Who are you talking about? Enchanting asked again. He had just returned from Elixir Peak and did not see Fingzhou there. He was about to return to his courtyard when he heard them whispering as he passed by. Fingzhou. We're talking about that brat Fingzhou. The mentors and the dean are all protecting him. This is great. I heard that he went to the city with Yi Jing this morning with the dean's warrant. Just now, Yi Jing came back and asked for help. She said something about Fingzhou being in trouble and asked Director Liu to bring her to the dean. We think that brat offended someone outside and was taught a lesson. At most, he would be beaten up. Yi Jing is just making a fuss out of nothing. However, when the students heard their words, Enchanting's expression changed and he immediately flew towards the main peak on his flying sword. Senior Nya, what's wrong? He didn't look too good when he heard that Fingzhou was in trouble. Does Senior Nya know that kid? That's impossible, right? As they talked, they were puzzled, but they didn't pay much attention to it. They sat down and chatted again. Enchanting, who was riding his sword towards the main peak, felt his heart in his throat. The people in the academy did not know who Fingzhou was, but he did. If there was no serious problem, why would she need someone to save her? However, in the Enchanting Kingdom, who would dare to make a move on the students of the College of Stars and Clouds? On the main peak, the principal and Mo Chen were playing chess. The vice principal sat by the side and watched, refilling their tea from time to time. The entire courtyard was filled with a leisurely atmosphere. Only when Director Liu's anxious voice could be heard from outside did the tranquility of the courtyard break. Dean, this is bad. Something has happened, something big has happened. Director Liu brought Yi Jing in hurriedly. Without bothering to bow, he pushed Yi Jing to the front of the principal and said anxiously, Dean, Yi Jing said that Fingzhou is being hunted outside. The people who are after Fingzhou are not ordinary people. She said that there are 8 Golden Core Adepts and 4 Nascent Soul Adepts. Dean, what do we do? What do we do now? What? Chapter 740. Yes, those people appeared on the street. Their auras were very powerful. If it wasn't for Fingzhou lending me a hand, I wouldn't have been able to escape and ask for help. Dean, Vice Dean, please save Fingzhou. If you don't save her, she definitely won't be able to live. With that kind of combat strength and that kind of powerhouse, how could she, a cultivator at the Great Spirit Master level, survive? Hearing this, the Dean and Vice Dean's expressions became serious. Mo Chen, who was holding a chess piece in his hand, also had a trace of surprise in his eyes. 8 Golden Core cultivators and 4 Nascent Soul powerhouses. How could he have provoked such people? At this moment, the Dean ordered in a deep voice, Director Liu, immediately ring the main peak's bell and summon the teachers of the Spiritual Academy and the Profound Academy. Come with us to save her. Yes. Director Liu responded and quickly went outside to ring the main peak's bell. The sound of the bell echoed from the main peak and echoed between the various academies. When the teachers of the various academies heard the sound of the bell, they were all startled. They quickly put down what they were doing and rushed to the main peak. At the same time, the Dean looked at the Vice Dean and ordered, Old Guan, immediately go outside and gather the teachers with Golden Core and Martial Saint cultivation. Yes. The Vice Dean also responded and quickly went out. Seeing this, Yi Jing quickly followed. She also wanted to go with them to save Fingzhou. At this moment, the Dean looked at Mo Chen and said, I didn't expect something like this to happen. Fingzhou is a student of the academy. Now that she's being chased by powerhouses, we must go and save her. After saying this, he cupped his hands and quickly rushed outside. When Enchanting, who was rushing to the main peak, heard the sound of the bell, his heart sank. As a student of the academy, he naturally knew what the bell meant. However, he didn't expect the situation to be so serious that the Dean would ring the bell to summon everyone. Seeing the teachers of the various academies fly to the main peak on their swords, he also increased his speed. At the same time, Guan Xilin and Xiao Yihan, who heard the news, also quickly rushed to the main peak. At the same time, Lao Bai took advantage of his master's absence to wander around. He originally wanted to go to the place where the female students often gathered to play with them. However, who knew that his master was in danger? He immediately rushed back to the cave. Swallow cloud, swallow cloud. Lao Bai's mouth was tied with a cloth's mouth. Tun Yun, who was lying beneath the tree, glanced at Senior White, who was shouting as he ran back, and he asked, "What is it? Could it be that you were discovered to peep at the girls' baths at the back of the Medicine Peak?" Woo woo woo. Lao Bai ran back and lay on the ground, pulling at the cloth in his mouth with his hooves. However, the more he pulled, the more it became a dead knot, a big matter. Something. To be. I heard from those people that Master is in danger. The people of the academy rang the bell to summon many teachers to save Master. It seems to be a big problem. We have to go and help. As soon as it heard this, the cloud-devouring beast that was lying on the ground had instantly stood up, and its lazy expression had vanished to be replaced by a fierce and bloodthirsty expression. It swiftly leaped onto Senior White's back and shouted, "Leave quickly." Chapter 741. On the main peak, Guan Xilin angrily glared at Enchanting when he saw him, but he didn't care about old grudges. Instead, he found Yi Jing and asked her about the situation. Then, when the Vice Dean and the others were about to leave, he wanted to go with them. "What are you going to do?" "There are 8 golden core cultivators and 4 nascent soul cultivators. We don't even know what their true cultivation is. With your strength, you're just courting death. Wait here for us to come back." As the Vice Dean spoke, he watched the Dean fly away with a group of teachers under Yi Jing's lead. He flicked his sleeves and said to Enchanting, Guan Xilin, and Xiao Yihan, "Go back quickly. Don't delay the rescue." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves. Without giving them a chance to speak, he quickly caught up with the people in front of him on his sword. Enchanting glanced at Guan Xilin, took a leap, and followed on his flying sword. Seeing that Enchanting also followed, Guan Xilin immediately took out the 8 trigrams plate that Fingzhou gave him and threw it into the air. He also jumped on it and followed closely behind. "Wait for me." Xiao Yihan also took out his flying magic tool and followed. In the academy, the students of the various academies were all shocked. They looked at the 4 nascent soul elders of the Nebula Academy, the 18 golden core instructors of the Spiritual Academy, and the 20 martial saint instructors of the Profound Academy. They all moved out under the leadership of the Dean and Vice Dean. Hiss. They actually used all the manpower of the golden core cultivators in the academy. Even the 4 nascent soul elders have appeared. The Dean and Vice Dean are also going together. What is going on? Who did that Fingzhou provoke? How can they use such fighting strength to go and meet the rescue? Also, why would the academy use all their fighting strength to go and save a new student? Is this Fingzhou really just a country bumpkin from a small 9th-ranked country? Look! That's young Master Mo Chen. The disciple of the Tianji elder is also following behind. The students below pointed at the immortal-like figure following at the very back. At this moment, the shock in their hearts was indescribable. On the other side, President Gong and the other 2 had already arrived at the dense forest. As soon as they stepped into the dense forest, they could feel an oppressive and powerful aura. The air was filled with a bloodthirsty killing intent that made one's heart tremble. There was even a faint smell of blood permeating the air. Could the ghost doctor be dead? The golden core cultivator asked. He won't die so easily. President Gong said in a deep voice, her life contract beast is the ancient mythical beast, the fire phoenix. Even if her life is hanging by a thread, her contract beast will still come out to protect her. I'm just afraid that there will be accidents. That way. As the old man spoke, his gaze fell on a direction in front of him. The airflow in front of us fluctuates greatly, and we can faintly hear the sounds of swords clashing. They should be in the depths of the forest. Go. As the three of them spoke, they quickly rushed inside. The closer they got, the more they could feel that the airflow and pressure in the air was different from the outside. The closer they got, the more the blood and chi in their bodies churned. President Gong and the nascent soul elder were still fine, but the golden core cultivator who came with them had to forcefully stabilize the chi in his body to prevent his mind from loosening and losing control of the airflow in his body. Chapter 742. Feng Zhou's red robe was stained with blood and had been slashed by numerous sharp blades. She was panting as she half knelt on the ground. She was using the sword in her hand to support her slightly disordered body. She seemed to be in a sorry state. However, her eyes were filled with battle intent and a cold light. They were as bright as the stars and were dazzling to the eyes. Four nascent soul stage cultivators and 2 golden core stage cultivators surrounded her. The powerful aura from the 6 of them caused the blood of the 3 people standing here to boil. However, Feng Zhou, who was in the middle, was still able to use her spiritual power and aura to stand up in the middle of them. The information said that she was only a great spiritual master. It was rare for a great spiritual master to be able to hold on for so long. Seeing her gaze sweep towards them, President Gong immediately said, "We'll help you." With that, he waved the sword in his hand, intending to open a way for her to escape. Feng Zhou's eyes flashed and she exhaled. Her gaze swept past the 3 people and she said, "Then let's deal with the 2 golden core cultivators." Hearing this, the 3 people instantly surrounded the 2 golden core cultivators. The 2 of them were at the peak of the golden core realm, which was the highest level among the golden core realm. Among the 3 of them, only President Gong was at the peak of the golden core realm. The old man was at the nascent soul realm, and the other golden core cultivator was only at the 3rd level. With their strength, they were indeed overestimating themselves if they wanted to fight against the 4 nascent soul cultivators. Since that was the case, they would lure the 2 away and kill them first. "You're here to die. We'll be taking your lives," the 2 peak golden core cultivators in black said in a gloomy voice. They flew away and arrived at a place dozens of meters away. Even if there was a nascent soul cultivator among the 3 of them, they were not undefeatable because they had magic treasures. Furthermore, how could the cultivators of this 6th-class small country be compared to them in terms of combat power? "Feng Zhou, you'd better surrender obediently. Otherwise, you'll have to suffer." One of the nascent soul cultivators snorted, "Don't think that these people can save you. You have to know that the 4 of us are at the peak of the nascent soul realm. With just a stomp of our feet, we can make the entire Star Cloud City collapse." At this moment, they displayed their full strength. They no longer suppressed their nascent soul cultivation, but released the aura and pressure that peak nascent soul cultivators should have. This was their trump card. The terrifying thing about a peak nascent soul cultivator was that they could destroy a city or even a country in an instant. Even the Star Cloud City Academy, they didn't put it in their eyes. Feng Zhou calmed herself down and stood up with the Qing Feng sword in her hand. Her aura seemed to be in a mess. In fact, at this moment, no one knew that the opportunity she had been waiting for had finally arrived. The blood in her body surged and roared, expanding every vein and muscle in her body. She could only feel her blood boiling, like streams of water flowing down from a high mountain, surging all the way to the sea. In her dantian, the droplet of water formed a whirlpool. The spiritual aura gradually surged, condensed, and became bigger and bigger, like a whirlpool absorbing the spiritual aura. She knew that even though this was not the best time to build her foundation, but it was the opportunity she had been waiting for. Chapter 743. She looked at the 4 nascent soul cultivators in front of her with a hint of madness in her eyes. The battle intent in her body was aroused at this moment. The aura of Xian Qi and the flow of spiritual energy converged into a ball, forming a shocking and enormous aura. The killing intent that covered the sky spread out from her body. The aura in the air within 10 meters of her body seemed to be sucked in by her. At this moment, she gave off a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Hiss. How is this possible? She actually has the profound spiritual body. Heavens! She actually has the profound spiritual body. The profound spiritual body that is hard to come by in 10,000 years. At this time, even the 4 nascent soul stage cultivators were shocked. Looking at the powerful aura that surged out from her body, they thought about the legend of the profound spiritual body. The profound spiritual body's cultivation speed was 10 times faster than a genius cultivator's. Or even more. One must know that even in the 8 great empires, there had never been a person with the profound spiritual body. Who would have thought that in this low-level country, the lowest level country, there would actually be someone with the profound spiritual body? No wonder that person would take a fancy to her. Even if she was ordinary and not outstanding, in a few years, her brilliance and cultivation would be above everyone else. We can't let her live. Kill her. Such a person with the profound spiritual body, she can't be allowed to live. Even if the higher-ups ordered them to bring her back after finding her, at this moment, they knew that they couldn't let such a person live. Otherwise, there would be too many variables and the threat would be too great. Kill her. As soon as the ruthless and bloodthirsty voice fell, the 4 nascent soul stage cultivators attacked together. If it was said that they still had some leeway before and only wanted to capture her alive, then at this moment, it could be said that they no longer had any leeway and wanted to kill her. If you don't let me live, then I'll let you die. Raging flames surged out from her body. That was the flame that came from the ancient mythical beast in her body. On top of the green sword, other than the surging green light, a cluster of flames also wrapped around it. With the protection of the ancient mythical beast's aura, the pressure of the 4 nascent soul stage cultivators posed no threat to her. Battle intent surged and killing intent appeared. The terrifying airflow and the terrifying pressure almost covered the entire forest at this moment. Even the people who were fighting dozens of meters away were blown away by the terrifying airflow visible to the naked eye under the pressure of the 4 nascent soul stage powerhouses and the powerful airflow surging out of Feng 9. The airflow was like layers upon layers of stormy waves, one after another, until it completely covered the entire forest. Regardless of whether it was the ground or the air, they were all surging with the powerful airflow and pressure that was like ripples on water. Boom! Whoosh! Bang bang! Aside from the old nascent soul cultivator, all of the cultivators who were sent flying out of the forest uncontrollably tumbled to the ground. Hearing the loud noise from the depths of the forest, the old nascent soul cultivator didn't investigate. Instead, he took advantage of the moment when the 2 gold core cultivators lost their balance and battle prowess due to the turbulence in the air. 2 short swords appeared in his hands and he pierced them with lightning speed toward their dantians, destroying their gold cores. Chapter 744. At this moment, a group of cultivators flew over on their swords, led by the dean and the vice-dean. When they saw the scene in front of the dense forest, they were slightly startled because they recognized that one of them was President Gong of the Black Market. In the blink of an eye, they took the lead and arrived behind them. President Gong, why are you here? The dean asked, his gaze falling on the 2 dead golden core cultivators on the ground. At the same time, he faintly heard the rumbling of battle coming from the dense forest. You're here too. President Gong looked at the dean, especially the group of cultivators behind him, and was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that he would have the entire academy's mentors come to rescue him, but that we rushed over after receiving the news. We saw Fingzhou inside, but I'm afraid we can't go in now. Look. He gestured towards the dense forest in front of them, at the strong air currents surging in the air. There are 4 peak nascent soul stage cultivators inside. The pressure of the peak nascent soul stage has been completely released, covering the entire forest. Most importantly, within the pressure of the peak nascent soul stage cultivators, there is also. President Gong hesitated at this point, looked at the dense forest in front of them, and didn't continue speaking. The dean and the vice dean looked inside and at the same time sensed that in addition to the aura of the nascent soul stage cultivators, there was also the aura of an ancient divine beast. Was it Fengzhou's life-bonded beast? His life-bonded beast was actually an ancient divine beast. Suppressing the shock in their hearts, the two exchanged glances and heard the mentors behind them exclaim in surprise. Hiss! Such strong spiritual energy fluctuations, how could Fengzhou still be alive? The pressure contained within these streams of spiritual energy actually caused our minds to tremble. This is the aura of a nascent soul stage cultivator. The 4 academy elders said in unison. Sending 4 nascent soul stage cultivators to kill a student. This was indeed a big move. Unlike the others, Guan Shilin, who was behind them on an 8-trigram frisbee, directly activated the frisbee's defense and flew inside without stopping. Seeing this, the dean and the others were shocked. Come back. Do you want to die? The dean and the vice dean couldn't care less about anything else and hurriedly chased after him. Following closely behind were the 4 nascent soul stage elders. After a slight pause, they also followed closely behind. Seeing this, the other mentors looked at each other and took out their magic treasures to activate their defenses and follow them in. Such a strong aura, even golden core stage cultivators wouldn't be able to move an inch. Fortunately, they all had defensive magic treasures on them. However, under this kind of pressure and aura, as of the year. Let's go in as well, said the nascent soul old man. Flicking his sleeve, he headed in as well. Niatang and Xiao Yihan also went inside. One of them was the crown prince of Qingting, while the other was the son of a noble family. Naturally, they did not lack Dharma artifacts. Chapter 745. He looked at the dense forest that was shrouded in pressure and airflow. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, who is Fengzhou? He flicked his sleeves and his white robe fluttered. He also went inside, deep in the forest. The more the 4 nascent soul cultivators fought with Fengzhou, the more shocked they became. Compared to the more they fought, the more spiritual energy they consumed, the more powerful she became. Her spiritual energy didn't weaken, but instead increased. It was as if something was continuously feeding her spiritual energy and Xian Qi. The more they fought, the faster she became and the more shocking her battle strength became. In particular, she was releasing an ancient pressure that slowed them down. Even though they were nascent soul cultivators, they couldn't help but feel fear in the face of the ancient pressure. After a round of battle, their bodies were covered in wounds. However, the wounds caused by the Qingfeng sword in her hand did not bleed. This was because the Qingfeng sword was covered in flames. When it sliced through their bodies, before blood could seep out, it had already been burned by the extremely high temperature of the flames and emitted a charred smell. The 4 nascent soul cultivators were all injured and their hair was disheveled. If they didn't experience it themselves, they wouldn't believe that a little great spirit master cultivator could force them into this state. After fighting with her, they once again understood the terror of the profound spirit body. If the 4 of them weren't men, they would have taken her body and used it to cultivate. If people from the outside world knew that she actually had the profound spirit body, those who wanted to take over her body would definitely throw themselves at her. This kind of body was the existence of a supreme cultivator, an irresistible temptation. What a pity, what a pity. Show. Boom. The azure sword cut through the air with a whoosh, bringing with it a fierce, bloodthirsty killing intent. When the powerful qi slashed down, it forced the qi aside. The qi from the astral sword carried with it an ancient pressure as it fiercely slashed down. With a boom, it struck one of the nascent soul cultivators. That nascent soul cultivator was shocked. He used the sword in his hand to block and poured all of his spiritual energy into it to block the overwhelming killing intent. However, even with his nascent soul cultivation, he was still pushed back by the powerful aura of the azure-edged sword and the ancient pressure. The powerful airflow blew against his face, causing his face to change shape. It was as if a sharp blade was scraping against his skin. He couldn't even open his eyes. Clang! Bang! The sharp sword that was blocking in front of him was actually broken by the powerful sword aura. With a clang, a part of the flying missile was thrown back into the air and stabbed into the ground. It was also at this moment that he was shocked by the powerful ancient pressure. He only felt that in the moment when he was caught off guard, a loud bang landed on his chest and sent him flying. After falling for several meters, he didn't stop. Instead, he left a long mark on the ground. Chapter 746. It wasn't until that moment that the nascent soul expert's life force was cut off that the remaining 3 people finally recovered from their shock. They were in disbelief and didn't dare to believe that a nascent soul expert had died in the hands of a great spirit master just like that, even if this great spirit master had a profound spirit body, even if her life contract beast was an ancient divine beast, even if she had an ancient divine aura, but that was a nascent soul cultivator. Even if their physical body were to perish, they would still be able to escape with their nascent souls. How could he die just like that? Because they couldn't believe it, one of the nascent soul cultivators flew over and helped the dead nascent soul cultivator up. Only then did he see that the broken sword had pierced through his dantian, where his nascent soul was. Just like that, without any warning, the broken sword had pierced through his body, leaving only a bit of the sword tip outside his blood-stained robes. It was also at this moment that the originally middle-aged nascent soul cultivator's life force was cut off and his nascent soul died. His face quickly withered and aged, and in the end, he became an old man so skinny that it was impossible to look at him anymore. The atmosphere seemed to freeze at this moment. That oppressive and gloomy aura was released from the remaining 3 nascent soul cultivators. Monstrous killing intent surged in the air, forming a flow of air that surrounded the place they were at. It was as if this place was cut off from the outside world. Not only was it cut off, it also blocked the view of those outside. When the dean and the others got closer, they felt their chi and blood surging and it was difficult to move. The few nascent soul cultivators were still fine, but the mentors gradually increased the distance between them and the dean and the others. Even if they wanted to move forward, they still couldn't get close. This was the difference in strength. The difference of 1 level was not just a little bit. Fengzhou. Die. A cold voice filled with monstrous killing intent came from inside, causing everyone outside the flow of air to be shocked and at the same time feel that it was inconceivable. Fengzhou was actually still alive. He could actually hold out for so long under the hands of a nascent soul cultivator? Xiaozhou. Xiaozhou. Guan Shilin was so anxious that his eyes turned red. Even though he was a martial arts grandmaster, at this moment, even if he desperately wanted to rush forward and rush into the airflow barrier, he could not take another step forward. Under the powerful pressure and airflow that permeated the air, every step he took felt as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. With every step he took, the chi and blood in his body boiled and tumbled, as if they were about to spurt out of his chest. Xiao Yihan was also in the same situation. Although he was already a foundation establishment cultivator, at this time, under this powerful pressure, it was difficult for him to move. The more difficult it was for him to move, the more shocked he was. If even they could move, with Fengzhou's cultivation, how could he resist for so long? You two retreat to the back first. The pressure and airflow here are too strong. You won't be able to withstand it, said the Vice Academy head. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent the 2 of them several dozen meters away. However, just as he was about to send Nyeting out, he noticed that Nyeting's icy cold gaze was staring at him, causing him to be slightly stunned. Why did he come along? Knowing the danger, he followed them. Could it be that he also knew Fingzhou? I'm not leaving. Chapter 747. It was a bead, a round bead that was even smaller than an egg. It didn't look special and wasn't very eye-catching. People who didn't know what it was would probably just treat it as a bead to play with. One of the 3 treasures of the Enchanting royal family, the obsidian wind bead. The dean was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Enchanting to have such a treasure on him. This thing was truly a treasure. Because it was made of obsidian and had a defensive formation engraved on it, it could block 12 attacks from a nascent soul cultivator. In addition to its defensive power, it could also stir up the wind in the air. At the same time, if a wind attribute cultivator were to obtain it, this pearl would be extremely useful in battle. Enchanting tossed the bead in his hand into the air. The bead spun instantly, blowing the surrounding air to one side and sucking in the strong airflow that formed the barrier under the bead. It formed a whirlwind of air and flew towards the forest on the other side. As the airflow that formed the barrier was sucked away, the scene of the battle appeared before everyone's eyes. However, when they saw the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but gasp. Fengzhou's red robe was lacerated with countless wounds. It was impossible to tell which blood belonged to him and which belonged to the enemy. They only knew that his red robe was stained with blood. What was shocking was the numerous wounds on his body, as well as the strong murderous aura and pressure that surged from his body. At this moment, what shocked them the most was not this, but the long sword in the hands of the nascent soul cultivator in front of him. The sword pierced through his entire shoulder. The sharp tip of the sword went in from the front and out from the back. Compared to the nascent soul cultivator's sword that pierced his shoulder, the sword in his hand that glowed with green light pierced through the nascent soul cultivator's heart. The sword's chi, which was mixed with flames, sliced through the heart and destroyed the nascent soul in an instant. Hiss! Everyone who saw this scene sucked in a breath of cold air. They could tell at a glance that this was a battle method of exchanging injuries for lives. This was a method of mutual destruction, where both sides would suffer great losses. The danger made them tremble in fear. If the nascent soul cultivator's sword had been accurate, he would have really paid with his life. Bang. The nascent soul cultivator's eyes were wide open. He was kicked by Fingzhou and fell to the ground. His nascent soul was also destroyed. Not even a trace of life was left. As the nascent soul cultivator fell backwards, the long sword stabbed into her shoulder was pulled out. At the same time, she staggered back a step and used the sword in her hand to support her body, stabilizing her slightly swaying footsteps. She tilted her head to look at the crowd that had rushed up. When she saw them, she couldn't help but be slightly startled. Familiar and unfamiliar, they were all here. Was this the entire academy? Fengzhou, we're here. The dean's gaze landed on the young man. Seeing that he was able to hold on until now, until they arrived, the dean's feelings were indescribable. They only knew that seeing that he was still alive, other than feeling excited, there was only excitement. The dean's wise and sharp gaze shifted away from Fengzhou as he looked at the remaining 2 nascent soul stage cultivators. His old and deep voice was filled with sharp killing intent as he spoke. Chapter 748. Kill. Kill. As the dean's order to kill fell, everyone roared at the same time. The 2 consecutive roars contained everyone's strong killing intent and fierceness. Even though most of the mentors were multi-dan cultivators and martial sages, none of them retreated. None of them were afraid. Instead, they rushed forward and surrounded the remaining 2 nascent soul cultivators to kill them. One person's strength was small, but many people's strength was great. With everyone's strength, how could they not kill nascent soul cultivators? Killing intent surged. The strong killing intent that burst out from everyone's body formed a killing intent that went straight for the 2 nascent soul cultivators. Even though their strength was not as strong as those 2, under the lead of the 4 nascent soul elders in front of them, as well as the dean and the vice dean, each of them was as ferocious as a tiger. Xiao Zhou. Guan Shilin ran over and supported the injured her. Seeing her covered in blood, his heart tightened. Let me stop your bleeding first. Fengzhou, how are you? Are you okay? Xiao Yihan also asked. When he saw him again, he couldn't say the words little brother Feng anymore. Who would dare to call a young man who could fight nascent soul cultivators alone as little brother? He did not know the depth of his strength before, but now that he knew, how could he dare to call someone who was stronger and more terrifying than him as little brother? Medicine. Just as Guan Shilin was about to take the medicine, he saw a hand reach in front of him and hand him a medicine bottle. He looked up at Enchanting and ignored him. Instead, he took out a bottle of medicine from his space and poured it on Fengzhou's shoulder. Enchanting looked at her pale face. This was the first time he saw her like this. Even though she was in a sorry state, it could not hide her dazzling beauty. Fighting nascent soul cultivators alone, her strength had already reached such a level. Fengzhou did not pay attention to Enchanting. Instead, her gaze fell on the people who were besieging the two nascent soul cultivators. She could feel the aura in her body churning uncontrollably, and the spiritual power in her body began to circulate. Brother, I want to build my foundation. Protect me. She only said this one sentence and then pushed him away. As she sat down cross-legged, she placed her hands in front of her chest and formed a complicated seal, setting up two barriers around her. Guan Shilin was stunned. Building foundation. Here. At this moment. After being stunned for a moment, he quickly calmed himself down. He saw that she had already sat down cross-legged to adjust her aura and her spirit force began to surge. He immediately stood guard outside the barrier like a guardian. He was vigilant of his surroundings to prevent the two nascent soul cultivators from attacking her. Guan Shilin wasn't the only one who was shocked. Enchanting was also stunned. He didn't say anything and just stood outside the barrier to protect her. Xiao Yihan, on the other hand, widened his eyes in shock. Foundation establishment. Did he hear wrongly? Fengzhou wanted to build his foundation here. Wasn't he afraid that if he couldn't protect her, his barrier would be broken by the nascent soul cultivators, disrupting his foundation and ruining all his previous efforts? We'll also protect her. President Gong and the other two people from the black market did not join the siege. Instead, they stood guard outside Fengzhou's barrier to protect her. Several people stood guard outside the barrier. On the other side, the dean and the vice dean were besieging the two nascent soul cultivators. Many mentors were injured and sent flying. Seeing that the Golden Core mentors couldn't even take a single blow from the two nascent soul cultivators, they became more and more anxious. Chapter 749. Seeing this, the nascent soul stage cultivator from the black market immediately flew out. He gathered spiritual power in his palm and attacked the peak nascent soul stage cultivator. Both of them were nascent soul stage cultivators. The difference was that one was at the peak while the other was at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. When the two palms collided, two streams of qi were released from their palms. With a loud bang, the two streams of qi exploded and attacked the surroundings, causing the airflow in the air to surge. After the two palms collided, the black market nascent soul stage cultivator's body was pushed back by the force of the impact. Even if he wanted to block it, he couldn't and heavily crashed into a tree. Bang! Pooh! Under the heavy impact, he fell to the ground and spat out blood. Just as he stood up, he swayed and fell forward. The nascent soul stage cultivator didn't care about the others. In his eyes, the others were dispensable. Only this Fengzhou had to be killed. He couldn't let her successfully break through. If she really did, there would be endless trouble in the future. Uncle! When guild leader Gong saw this, he cried out in alarm. When he saw the nascent soul cultivator strike down with his palm and shatter the first layer of the barrier before anyone could stop him, guild leader Gong clenched his teeth and charged forward with his sword in hand. Unexpectedly, before he could even get close to the nascent soul cultivator, he was swept dozens of meters away with a flick of his sleeve. Bang! His body fell heavily to the ground and a trace of blood flowed from his mouth. Even though he was at the peak of the Golden Core stage, he didn't have the upper hand against a nascent soul stage cultivator. Damn it! He pounded the ground, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and stood up once more. Just as he was about to charge forward and fight again, he saw that the Academy's elders, headmaster, and vice-headmaster had already split into two groups and surrounded the nascent soul cultivator. Dozens of meters away, his uncle fell to the ground and didn't stand up. He quickly rushed over and helped him up. "Uncle, how are you? Are you okay?" He helped him up and asked. "Cough, cough, cough." The elder coughed a few times and blood flowed out of his mouth. He said, "The peak of the original level is indeed extraordinary. Even I, as an original level, cannot block one of his attacks." As he spoke, he looked over and saw Fingzhou moving his hands in the last layer of the barrier. His eyes widened in shock. Her aura. Her spiritual energy and Xian Qi intertwined. This aura belonged to her alone, and it seemed to be very close. Because of this, no one in the aura's core stage could tell. Only a few nascent soul stage cultivators knew what was going on. President Gong saw that his expression was strange, so he asked, "What's wrong with her aura?" Even if he was a little stronger, he shouldn't be so shocked, right? After all, everything Fingzhou did was shocking. For example, if they didn't see it with their own eyes, how could they believe that she, a great spirit master cultivator, could actually kill a nascent soul stage cultivator? This matter, no matter where it was, would be inconceivable. Not far away, Mo Qin, dressed in white, stood on a tree branch. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the youth sitting cross-legged on the ground, preparing to break through. He looked at the blood-stained red clothes on his body and his closed eyes. He seemed to be deep in thought. Chapter 750. The dark clouds grew larger and larger, almost covering the entire forest. A powerful pressure of the heavens and the earth pressed down from the clouds. The powerful pressure from the sky and the pressure from the forest rejected each other, creating a powerful gust of air that shook the ground. The people who were surrounding the two nascent soul cultivators were shocked and looked up in astonishment. They knew that Fingzhou was in the foundation establishment stage. It wasn't that they hadn't tried to build their foundation before, but they had never caused such a big commotion. Moreover, why did the pressure released by the dark clouds contain the qi of heaven and earth? Among the crowd, only the dean, the vice-dean, and the four nascent soul elders were shocked because they knew what it was. It was the qi of heaven and earth. He actually drew upon the qi of heaven and earth to build his foundation. This was simply unprecedented. Normally, cultivators needed a foundation establishment pill to build their foundation. It could be said that it was a must. 9 out of 10 people who tried to build their foundation without a foundation establishment pill would fail. Failing to build their foundation would not only destroy their Tao foundation, but would also cause their strength to regress by several stages. Therefore, without a foundation establishment pill, even Heaven's Chosen wouldn't dare to build their foundation. Legend had it that there was a type of foundation establishment called the Perfect Foundation Establishment. It gathered the qi of heaven and earth to complete the foundation establishment without the help of a foundation establishment pill. If the foundation establishment was successful, it would lay an extraordinary foundation for the Golden Core. However, this type of foundation establishment was also called the Heavenly Tao Foundation Establishment. It was very difficult to find one in 100,000 people. Now, they saw Feng Nine drawing the qi of heaven and earth and seeing that he wanted to build his foundation with the help of the qi of heaven and earth. His boldness really made them break out in a cold sweat and worry about him. At this moment, even though they knew that he was a cultivation genius and that they couldn't treat him as an ordinary cultivator or heaven's chosen, they were still very shocked. Using a foundation establishment pill to enter the foundation establishment stage was called the mortal grade foundation establishment. Once the foundation establishment was completed, one would officially enter the Tao of immortality and their lifespan would increase to 200 years. Using the chi of heaven and earth to build one's foundation was called the heaven grade foundation establishment. Once the foundation establishment stage was completed, one's strength would be far beyond that of a middle grade foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, their lifespan would increase to 300 years, which was equivalent to the lifespan of a golden core cultivator. How could they not be shocked? Boom! The first heavenly thunder struck down heavily while everyone was shocked. It penetrated the bounded domain and landed on Fengzhou's body. At the same time, a visible airflow rippled outwards like water ripples, spreading outwards in circles. The two nascent soul stage cultivators who were besieged by the crowd saw the first lightning strike and immediately gathered a stream of air in their hands to blast towards Fengzhou. The dean and the others tried their best to block, but they were still sent flying by the stream of air that gathered all the strength of the peak nascent soul stage. One by one, they were sent flying dozens of meters away. Boom! The second bolt of heavenly lightning also struck at this moment, tempering her body, her meridians, and the strong aura on her body surged, forcibly breaking the ribbon that bound her black hair. Her black hair scattered in the air and fluttered messily. Die! The two nascent soul stage cultivators attacked together, gathering a strong stream of air to form a whirlpool. With an overwhelming killing intent, they attacked Fengzhou, intending to destroy her Tao foundation and kill her with a burst of blood and qi. Xiaozhou. Fengzhou. Fengzhou. Chapter 751. At this moment, the white-clothed Immerse finally rushed forward in a flash, blocking the front of the barrier. Her hands rapidly condensed a powerful current of air and shot out, blocking the powerful killing intent that was rushing towards her. However, even if he took action, it would be difficult for him to withstand the combined attack of two nascent soul stage cultivators. The air attacks from both sides collided in mid-air, producing sharp sounds of air currents. The pressure of the three cultivators collided with the air currents and finally exploded. The strong hidden aura pushed both sides back several meters. As both sides retreated, blood seeped from the corners of their mouths. The strong impact sent Guan Shilin and the other two flying again. The last defensive barrier set up by Fengzhou also broke at this time. Bang! Immerse looked back and glanced at the person who was sitting cross-legged with air currents surging from his body. His black hair was scattered and flew messily. His face, which was only handsome in the past, was now extremely beautiful. Under the red robes, it was even more enchanting, inexplicably adding a feminine charm. Immerse's eyes moved slightly as he stared at that enchanting and beautiful face. After a long time, he looked away and glanced at the Xianling Qi and the powerful aura that was emitted from Fengzhou after the barrier was broken. He slowly turned back and looked at the two nascent soul stage cultivators in front of him. At the same time, he raised his hand and wiped away the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Looking at the bright red blood on his fingertips, his eyes darkened. He, who was like a banished immortal, was now emitting a terrifying murderous aura. Just as the two nascent soul stage cultivators were shocked that he could block their combined attack with 100% of his strength, the figure in front of them flashed. The white figure flashed and appeared in front of the two of them in an instant. She grabbed their necks with both hands, and before they could react, their necks were crushed. That action was very casual and effortless, but it completely stunned the crowd behind him. The two nascent soul stage cultivators died with fear on their faces. But at this time, two small figures flew out from their bodies and tried to escape. However, before they could fly a meter away, they were once again killed by Immerse. Seeing this, not only the dean and the vice headmaster, but even the 4 nascent soul stage elders of the Academy swallowed and looked at him in shock. Such a banished immortal, such a pure person, when he killed people, it was so terrifying that it made people's hearts tremble, even though they knew that his strength was unfathomable. When they saw him effortlessly kill 2 nascent soul stage cultivators, they couldn't help but feel shocked. Could it be that his cultivation level was beyond the nascent soul stage? Could it be that his strength was above the nascent soul stage? Everyone felt their hair stand on end, especially when he turned to look at them with an indifferent expression. With the exception of the dean and the vice dean, everyone couldn't help but take a step back. Boom! The 3rd bolt of lightning struck at this time, breaking the strange atmosphere. Everyone's gaze finally moved away from the banished immortal Mo Chin and landed on Fingzhou, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. After the 3rd bolt of lightning struck, the surrounding spiritual aura surged into Fingzhou's body. His cultivation level also rose step by step. Looking at the speed of his growth, everyone's jaws dropped. Chapter 752. One of the instructors swallowed his saliva and supported the person beside him. Other people advance by 1 or 2 stages. How could he advance by only 1 stage? He directly entered the foundation establishment stage. After the early stage, he didn't stop even after entering the middle stage. How can Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment be the same? It's definitely different. That's true. In all these years, the Academy has never encountered a Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment cultivator. However, looking at Fingzhou's terrifying aura, it's indeed different from ordinary Foundation establishment cultivators. At the front, the dean and vice dean heard the discussions of the instructors behind them and the corners of their mouths twitched imperceptibly. They didn't know that Fingzhou had a profound spiritual body and thought that the aura came from Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment. However, they didn't know that people with a profound spiritual body advanced differently from others. When ordinary cultivators entered the Foundation establishment stage, they would stop at the 1st stage of Foundation establishment. Even genius cultivators would stop at the 2nd or 3rd stage at most. For someone like Fingzhou, who directly broke through the early stage and entered the middle stage, there were very few of them. After about half an incense stick's worth of time, the surrounding spiritual aura returned to Fingzhou's body. Her cultivation also continued to rise. After entering the middle stage, it continued to rise. It didn't stop until the late stage and the peak stage. Her spiritual aura continued to surge as if it wanted to break through the final threshold. However, there was a limit to her ability. After several attempts at the peak stage, her spiritual aura gradually weakened and finally stopped. Even so, she became a peak Foundation establishment cultivator as soon as she stepped into the Foundation establishment stage. This kind of advancement speed caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. It had to be known that ordinary cultivators would need at least 10 years to advance from the early stage to the middle stage. However, he actually broke through to the peak of Foundation establishment in less than half an hour. Fingzhou slowly opened her eyes. At this moment, she felt that her body was different. Because she had entered the Foundation establishment stage, a small sea of spiritual aura formed in her dantian. It was like a whirlpool of spiritual aura that surged in her dantian, wrapping around the green lotus in her dantian. After entering the Foundation establishment stage, her vision seemed to have changed. She could hear small sounds from afar and see small things. In short, it felt very strange. However, what made her feel strange was that this white-clothed immortal was currently standing in front of her, staring straight at her. That kind of strange gaze that was sizing her up caused her to be involuntarily stunned. What? She sat cross-legged and didn't move. Even though she had entered the Foundation establishment stage, the injuries on her body hadn't healed. You are a woman. Mo Chen stared at her. His voice was calm, but his eyes and his heart were not calm. Everyone. Enchanting frowned and stared coldly at Mo Chen. Guan Shilin also stared coldly at him. Chapter 753. When Fengzhou, who was sitting cross-legged, heard this, she blinked and looked at Imogen in front of her. Seeing the expression on his face, as well as the astonished gazes of the people around her, the corners of her lips curled up slightly. She reached out her hand and lifted a strand of black hair that was hanging down her cheek. She glanced at it, then casually tucked the strand of hair behind her ear. Only then did she stand up with the Qingfeng sword by her side. However, due to the injury on her shoulder and the other injuries on her body, her figure was slightly swaying when she stood up. At this moment, everyone seemed to have just noticed the Qingfeng sword in her hand. They were all stunned, and the series of shock made them not know how to react. "Thank you all for coming to save me. Fengzhou thanks you all." Although her face was slightly pale, she still held the sword in her hand and bowed to everyone. Her gaze swept past the injured mentors and the three people from the black market. When her gaze swept past Enchanting, she paused for a moment, then landed on the dean and the vice dean. "Perhaps you all still don't know my identity." She revealed a smile. "I'm the princess of the Phoenix dynasty, a 9th-ranked country. Therefore, I'm really a woman." She looked at Imogen with the last sentence, as if she was talking to him. The entire forest instantly fell silent. Every pair of eyes landed on her. At this moment, she was dressed in red, with her black hair draped over her shoulders. Although her face was pale, she was in high spirits. She was confident and cunning. No one thought that she was a youth anymore. Because no matter how they looked at her, she was an enchanting beauty. You filled in the registration form as a man. One of the mentors swallowed his saliva. He only felt that it was inconceivable. The princess of a 9th-ranked country, the Phoenix dynasty. Fengzhou. A woman. Why did she dress as a man? Yes. She nodded and said, "Because it's more convenient for men to walk," and her voice paused, and her eyes, which were as dazzling as stars, narrowed. She smiled with a hint of teasing and slyness, and said with a smile that seemed to be both real and fake, "Moreover, my appearance is so beautiful that it can topple cities, and my elegance is unparalleled in the world. If I were to walk around in women's clothes, my admirers would rush to my front and back, and I really wouldn't be able to resist them. However, it's different when I wear men's clothes. I'm elegant and handsome, and thousands of girls will fall for me. It's really much better than women's clothes." Black lines appeared on everyone's forehead as the corners of their mouths twitched. Speechless, they looked away. As soon as the danger was averted, she returned to her usual frivolous self. How could the current her be as fierce and ruthless as she was when she fought against a nascent soul cultivator? Where was the awe-inspiring presence from before? This Fengzhou, most of the mentors who hadn't interacted with her before only knew that she had a strange personality. Seeing her today, it really verified everyone's evaluation of her in the academy. However, according to what they knew, even if she was handsome and elegant in men's clothes, there were still many male and female students who gave her a nickname, Pretty Boy. Seeing everyone's strange expressions, she smiled embarrassedly. Her narcissistic boasting made her a little embarrassed to continue. Thus, she put away her azure-edged sword, and climbed onto Guan Xilin's shoulder with one hand, and exhaled lightly. "Brother, carry me back. My body is full of injuries, it hurts like hell." Chapter 754. Enchanting's face instantly darkened when he saw this. His gloomy eyes stared at the figure that had disappeared into the distance in an instant. The corners of his lips were pursed into a line. In the end, he gathered his strength and followed closely behind the figure towards the academy. Guan Xilin's expression was not too good either. He had originally bent his knees and was about to carry his sister on his back, but who knew that she would be carried away by Imogen? Anyone would be unhappy. At that moment, he threw out the 8 trigrams plate and quickly chased after them. Only Xiao Yicheng stood in a daze. Before he could recover from Fengzhou's words, he saw Fengzhou being carried away by Imo-chin. The dean and the vice dean looked at each other and were slightly surprised. Based on their understanding of Imo-chin, he was not someone who would do such a thing. But why did he carry Fengzhou and leave without saying a word? Ahem. The dean coughed dryly and looked sternly at everyone. He instructed, since Fengzhou appeared in male clothing, it means that she does not want others to know that she is a woman. When you go back, don't mention a word about what happened here. One of the teachers hesitated and asked, Dean, the sword in her hand just now seemed to be the ancient divine sword, Qingfeng. Hearing this, the headmaster's dignified gaze landed on the instructor. He said in a deep voice, it's the ancient divine sword, the Qingfeng sword. That's right. She must have obtained this sword through her own fortuitous encounters. Anything you see or hear here is not to be mentioned again. Yes, we understand. Everyone nodded solemnly. They also knew that this was a serious matter. If they did not handle it well, not only would it bring trouble to Fengzhou, it would also bring disaster to their academy. You heard it too. The dean's gaze fell on the dazed Xiao Yihan. Xiao Yihan recovered and said with a serious expression, Don't worry, Dean. I will definitely not say a word. There was only shock in his heart. How could he think of telling others about this? Moreover, what happened today was too unbelievable. A person he called little brother actually had the ability to fight a nascent soul cultivator alone. Moreover, it was a woman. Alright, let's go back. Those with light injuries, support those with heavy injuries. With that, the dean took the lead and left, leaving the rest to the vice dean. On the other side, Imo-chin, who was carrying Fengzhou on his sword, looked ahead, but his heart skipped a beat and his body stiffened. This was because the person in his arms had been staring at him ever since he picked her up. That kind of sizing up gaze was blatant and undisguised, causing him to be unable to relax. Gongzi Imo-chin. Fengzhou stared at banished immortal, whose lips were pursed. Hearing this, he did not lower his head. He only said indifferently, If you have something to say, say it. You're hugging me too tightly, Fengzhou teased. Imo-chin froze. He lowered his head and met her teasing gaze. He glanced at her and then looked away. As his body relaxed, the hand that was hugging her also relaxed a little. Fengzhou smiled and gradually relaxed. She closed her eyes and said, I'm a little tired. I'm going to sleep for a while. After the fierce battle, all that was left of his body were injuries and fatigue. As the crisis was resolved, his entire body relaxed and he gradually fell asleep. After a long while, Imo-chin lowered his head and glanced at the woman sleeping in his arms. A complicated look flashed through his eyes. Without a doubt, he knew that the person he was looking for was her. Chapter 755. Yi Jing was waiting anxiously at the entrance of the academy. She had originally gone with the headmaster and the others, but when they went to the main street of the city, they were told by the citizens that those people had gone in the direction of the dense forest. She wanted to follow them, but was called back by the vice headmaster. Her cultivation was the weakest among the group, and he was afraid that he would have to take care of her if she went. Thus, in order not to be a burden, she could only come back and wait. However, after waiting for so long, they still had not returned. The more time passed, the more uneasy she felt. I wonder if they'll be able to save Fengzhou. Will Fengzhou be able to hold on until the headmaster and the others arrive? She muttered to herself as she paced back and forth uneasily. Occasionally, she would raise her head to look at the sky in the east, hoping to see them return on their swords. However, after a long time, she finally saw a figure flying towards her on a sword. She was overjoyed. When she focused her gaze, she saw that it was young Master Imo-chin, and in his arms was Fengzhou, whose red robes had been torn and whose black hair was disheveled. Fengzhou. she happily called out. Seeing that young Master Machin didn't stop carrying her and directly flew into the academy on his sword, she immediately took out her flying device and followed. Behind them, Enchanting and Guan Xilin arrived one after another. Their gazes were fixed on Imo Chen, who was carrying Fingzhou. When they saw that he was carrying Fingzhou to the main peak, they followed him to the main peak. After placing Fingzhou in the room next to his, he took a look at her injuries. Because most of her injuries were on her body, he could not take off her clothes to examine her, so he retreated. This is medicine for her injuries. Go in and help her treat her wounds, he said to Yi Jing, who had followed closely behind him, and handed her a bottle of medicine at the same time. Okay. Yi Jing replied, took the medicine, and quickly went in. Enchanting and Guan Xilin also landed in the courtyard. When they saw him sitting in the courtyard, they were about to go in and take a look when they heard his voice. A female student is bandaging her wound. Hearing that, the two of them stopped walking. Remembering that she was injured, they did not enter and instead retreated to the courtyard. They looked at the exiled deity male sitting by the stone table and did not say anything. The headmaster and the vice-headmaster followed. The two of them sat down in the courtyard and waited for the door to open. After about an hour, Yi Jing walked out. Yi Jing, how's Xiaozhou? Guan Xilin asked. Everyone's eyes fell on her as well. She's fine. Her shoulder injury is quite serious, but it's already been bandaged. She woke up after sleeping for a while. She even took the medicine herself and then fell asleep again. Seeing that Fingzhou was still alive, she already felt very lucky. After all, not everyone could survive being hunted down by such a powerhouse. I'll go in and have a look. As Guan Xilin spoke, he strode inside. However, just as he was about to push open the door, he stopped and frowned slightly at Enchanting, who was beside him. Why are you following me? Enchanting glanced at him and said in a low voice, Get out of the way. Pfft. Get out of the way. You want to go in. Who are you? Guan Xilin sneered and blocked the door to prevent him from entering. Hearing that, Enchanting's eyes darkened. Spiritual energy surged in his body. Just as he was about to make a move, he heard the vice-headmaster's voice. All right, stop messing around here.